is one of the world's most geographically diversified steel producers, with operations and commercial presence across the world. The story began with the dream of one man, Jamsetji Nusserwanji Tata, a pioneer, a visionary, a man ahead of his times. He had his heart set on building a steel plant in India that would compare with the best globally. His dream was brought to fruition by his son, Dorabji Tata, and thus was born Tata Iron and Steel in Jamshedpur in 1907. At the turn of the 21st century, fueled by its global aspirations, Tata Steel expanded its footprint to Southeast Asia in Singapore and Thailand. Acquisition of Chorus in Europe in 2007 placed it amongst the top global steel companies in the world. In 2015, Tata Steel set up a state-of-the-art integrated steel plant at Kalinganagar, Odisha in India. The Phase 2 expansion of Kalinganagar steel plant from 3 million TPA to 8 million TPA is currently underway. The company is all set to pursue domestic growth with its acquisition of Bhushan Steel Limited and the steel business of Usha Martin. This forms part of the overall strategy to increase its India footprint, build capacity in long products, and enrich the product portfolio. Besides steel manufacturing facilities, the company has mining assets in the state of Jharkhand and Odisha in India. Tata Steel has evolved into a leading steel manufacturer, catering to diverse market segments. In its trend-setting journey, spanning more than a century, Tata Steel has contributed immensely towards the well-being of the planet and people. Guided by its vision to be the global steel industry benchmark for value creation and corporate citizenship, Tata Steel is poised to lead the future.
Globalization is driving economies the world over, changing the face of nations. Because development brings urbanization, and urbanization demands infrastructural supports. And one core essential need of a sustainable social infrastructure is the continuous supply of fresh water. The mechanisms to store, clean and deliver water are increasingly becoming important. Electrosteel is privileged to play its role in this vast and vital undertaking while building its own resources towards ever wider global horizons. With 50 years of experience in centrifugal casting of iron pipes, Electrosteel was the pioneer to introduce ductile iron spun pipes in the Indian subcontinent in 1994. Electrosteel pipes are omnipresent in all phases of water management. From lifting and carrying water from the source to users, to disposal of wastewater, essential to the sustainable urban infrastructure of any human society. Its technological leadership is maintained by continuous product innovation and technical upgradation. Electrosteel has a modern ductile iron pipe and fittings plant at Kharda, Kolkata in West Bengal. It employs state-of-the-art technology, electronic process control and robotics to produce pipes and fittings as per international benchmarks. Low phosphorus, low sulfur hot metal suitable for ductile iron comes from its own blast furnace. Its sinter plant enables diverse mixes of raw materials for precisely optimized hot metal output. At Haldia, it has its own coke oven plant to improve the quality of metallurgical coke. Its own sponge iron plant here in Haldia helps to enhance the metal output. A major part of Electrosteel's ductile iron pipe is exported to more than 30 different countries across 5 continents, competing successfully with other global players. A widespread global distribution network with a number of subsidiary companies and branch offices in France, Algeria, UK, USA, Singapore, Spain and the Middle East support the international marketing. Strategically located stockyards enable timely deliveries anywhere it is needed. Its customers can count on its ISO 9001 and ISO 14001 certification for consistency in quality, variety of product mix, prompt delivery, competitive prices and environment-friendly processes. Its products' performance is validated by quality approvals and international certifications from various countries like UK, USA, Germany, France, Singapore, the Middle East and Africa. From raw material to finished product, stringent quality checks are embedded in every step of manufacturing. Material quality, mechanical properties, dimensional accuracy, protective coatings and linings. Almost everything is placed under the scanner to ensure that the final product outlasts the expected service life. Continuous product development as per global requirements and international standards have written the success story of Electrosteel. Its R&D facility with fully equipped laboratory is focused on continuous innovation. A modern design and development center supports the core process of development of new products and innovative product features. Ductile iron is the ideal material for making strong and durable conduits for fluid transmission in a sustainable infrastructure. With greater tensile strength than mild steel and good impact resistance, ductile iron pipes can withstand tremendous physical stresses, high soil prism load and traffic loads to ensure long and trouble-free service life. They perform in all imaginable conditions. Snow-clad mountains, dry deserts, clay marshland, and salt-heavy coastal locations. As a single source, Electrosteel offers ductile iron pipes and fittings with a variety of joints, ranging in diameter from 80 mm to 1000 mm, which will soon be enhanced up to 1200 mm. Ductile iron pipes are available in varied thickness and classes. As per national standard and latest international specifications like ISO, European and American specifications. Electrosteel makes flanged pipes of all 3 types: welded, screwed and as-cast flanged pipes. Varying with external conditions, Electrosteel offers a wide variety of protective, application-specific external coatings and internal linings. External coatings range from standard zinc and bitumen coatings to polyurethane, zinc aluminium alloy and fusion-bonded epoxy coatings, besides providing polysleeving in aggressive soil conditions. Internally, pipes are normally cement mortar lined, where the cement is customized according to fluid characteristics. Special linings such as liquid epoxy lining, bitumen, or epoxy seal coat over cement mortar is also available. Ceramic epoxy lining is applied to resist high abrasion. Castings for ductile iron fittings are made with the modern lost foam process. It scores on higher productivity, excellence of finish, uniform thickness, and best of all, high dimensional accuracy, so vital for precise leak-tight fitment. Available ductile iron fittings include those with push-on joints, flange joints, mechanical joints, and restraint joints. Special fusion-bonded epoxy coating system ensures excellent finish and high durability. Restraint joint pipes and fittings, developed as a speciality by Electro Steel, dispense with the need for costly concrete thrust blocks for fail-safe transmission of fluids at high pressure. Electro Steel is a total solution provider in drinking water supply and distribution systems. Its team of professionals, equipped with the latest design software, can provide customized solutions during project conceptualization and design. It also provides detailed on-the-spot technical guidance during installation to ensure proper laying of pipelines as specified. A dedicated wing undertakes execution of complete customer-specified water supply systems on a turnkey basis. Electro Steel had the unique distinction to become one of the first ductile iron pipe manufacturers in the world to earn the ISO 14001 certification. A diverse range of in-plant pollution control systems has made it a clean and green plant, winning environmental awards. Recycling waste material in various stages of the production process to the maximum extent, and also conserves energy, reducing the carbon footprint. As a definite step towards reducing the carbon footprint, the 12 megawatt power plant in Haldia, based on heat from waste gas, is a clean development mechanism project. It is registered with the United Nations Framework Convention for Climate Change under the Kyoto Protocol. As one of the world's largest in its field, Electro Steel has already been involved in more than 8,000 water and wastewater projects, installing its ductile iron pipes and fittings. A dedicated customer base of more than 500 water management authorities scattered over 5 continents rely on Electro Steel products. Electro Steel is steadfast in its commitment to enhance shareholder value with consistent financial performance. A unique family of over 3,000 professionals, harnessed by teamwork and motivated to achieve, is the most vital resource of Electro Steel. With capabilities tested and proven world-class as it grows, Electro Steel is steady on its course to a sustainable global leadership. It promises and delivers.
सरदार जोत सिंह।
हम लोग को तो पैसा नहीं था, नहीं पढ़े। अब हमारा पास पैसा है और लड़का पढ़ नहीं सके, तो कोई ना कोई स्कूल ऐसा बनाओ जिसमें सब आए।
আমি প্রথম দিন থেকে লক্ষ্য করেছি যে বাবুজির চোখে মহিলা পুরুষ কোনো আলাদা ভেদাভেদ নেই।
1976-77 সালে পশ্চিমবঙ্গে সবথেকে বেশি দুধ সরবরাহ করতেন সরদার জোত সিংজি। ডানলপ এরিয়াতে যত দুস্থ ছেলে মেয়ে আছে, পড়াশোনা যাদের হচ্ছে না বা আর্থিক অভাব রয়েছে, গুরুমা প্রত্যেককে সাহায্য করেন।
He had an unshakable faith in the Almighty. Starting from virtually nothing, he has built an empire that encompasses dairy, agriculture, education, and telecommunication. His unquenchable thirst for knowledge, diligence, and honest work ethics has made JIS the burnished, shining brand that it is today.
लाखों लाखों परिवार इनके वजह से जीता है और नून रोटी का व्यवस्था हो रहा है। भगवान ने अच्छा जो है इनको आयु भी दिया है, जितना दिन बचे रहेंगे हम लोग के लिए बेनिफिट है, लॉटरी है।
उन्होंने पूरे होते हैं, इंसान हिम्मत करे, भगवान इमदाद देता है।
चुप चुप न हो वही जे लाए रहा लिपतार CIS है हम है गुरुकुल हमारा।
Are you the black who is high on wheels? Are you the bold who blossoms in black? Are you the black who's in tune with white? Are you that beauty who makes a statement with black? Are you the black who never shuts the shutter? Are you that crazy head who's game for black? The black of your gadgets, the black of your car, the black of your glasses, the black of your guitar. Discover your passion. Discover your black. Philips Carbon Black Limited. Touching lives in more ways than one.
Caring Minds is the brainchild of founder and director Meenu Budhia. The seeds of the facility were sown with the birth of Meenu's younger daughter Prachi, 8 years after her elder daughter Priyam was born. As Prachi was growing up, her family noticed that she was having a difficult time at school. Prachi was diagnosed with ADHD, low IQ, and later bipolar disorder. As a mother, Meenu was not only concerned about her daughter,
Hello.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, audible.
Visible clearly?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
she trained to become a psychotherapist and counselor. Wanting to apply the expertise she gained while training her daughter, she started her first social initiative, Caring Minds. Priyam, who had been studying and working in the UK for 6.5 years, returned to join Caring Minds as the head of new initiatives. Established in 2013, this sprawling super specialty facility is a gift to the city of Kolkata and East India. The vision behind Caring Minds was to introduce to the community a one-stop solution for all problems related to psychological health. It is a state-of-the-art center for mental health care and psychological growth. Here, mental health professionals provide expert services for both clinical and non-clinical issues across all age groups, from children to the elderly. Caring Minds offers an easily accessible and inviting environment in which you can consult with a highly efficient group of experts. We have 3 wings: training and development, clinical, and academia. The Training and Development Wing conducts soft skills workshops for schools, corporates, and other socio-cultural organizations. The clinical wing deals with all issues related to the mind. It aims to help people who are in need of a guiding hand for their overall emotional well-being. The academia wing is a training academy that develops and delivers both short and long-term psychology-related courses. Your blessings enthuse us. Sometimes we need help and guidance to feel better. You are not alone. To drive your blues away, visit Caring Minds today. Together, let's say hello to a better, brighter tomorrow.
Globalization is driving economies the world over, changing the face of nations. Because development brings urbanization, and urbanization demands infrastructural supports. And one core essential need of a sustainable social infrastructure is the continuous supply of fresh water. The mechanisms to store, clean and deliver water are increasingly becoming important. Electro Steel is privileged to play its role in this vast and vital undertaking while building its own resources towards ever wider global horizons. With 50 years of experience in centrifugal casting of iron pipes, Electrosteel was the Electrosteel pipes are omnipresent in all phases of water management. From lifting and carrying water from the source to users, to disposal of wastewater, essential to the sustainable urban infrastructure of any human society. Its technological leadership is maintained by continuous product innovation and technical upgradation. Electrosteel has a modern ductile iron pipe and fittings plant at Kharda, Kolkata in West Bengal. It employs state-of-the-art technology, electronic process control and robotics to produce pipes and fittings as per international benchmarks. Low phosphorus, low sulfur hot metal suitable for ductile iron comes from its own blast furnace. Its sinter plant enables diverse mixes of raw materials for precisely optimized hot metal output. At Haldia, it has its own coke oven plant to improve the quality of metallurgical coke. Its own sponge iron plant here in Haldia helps to enhance the metal output. A major part of Electrosteel's ductile iron pipe is exported to more than 30 different countries across 5 continents, competing successfully with other global players. A widespread global distribution network with a number of subsidiary companies and branch offices in France, Algeria, UK, USA, Singapore, Spain and the Middle East support the international marketing. Strategically located stockyards enable timely deliveries anywhere it is needed. Its customers can count on its ISO 9001 and ISO 14001 certification for consistency in quality, variety of product mix, prompt delivery, competitive prices and environment-friendly processes. Its product's performance is validated by quality approvals and international certifications from various countries like UK, USA, Germany, France, Singapore, the Middle East and Africa. From raw material to finished product, stringent quality checks are embedded in every step of manufacturing. Material quality, mechanical properties, dimensional accuracy, protective coatings and linings. Almost everything is placed under the scanner to ensure that the final product outlasts the expected service life. Continuous product development as per global requirements and international standards have written the success story of Electrosteel. Its R&D facility with fully equipped laboratory is focused on continuous innovation. A modern design and development center supports the core process of development of new products and innovative product features. Ductile iron is the ideal material for making strong and durable conduits for fluid transmission in a sustainable infrastructure. With greater tensile strength than mild steel and good impact resistance, ductile iron pipes can withstand tremendous physical stresses, high soil prism load and traffic loads to ensure long and trouble-free service life. They perform in all imaginable conditions. snow-clad mountains, dry deserts, clay marshland, and salt-heavy coastal locations. As a single source, Electrosteel offers ductile iron pipes and fittings with a variety of joints, ranging in diameter from 80 mm to 1000 mm, which will soon be enhanced up to 1200 mm. Ductile iron pipes are available in varied thickness and classes, as per national standard and latest international specifications like ISO, European and American specifications. Electrosteel makes flanged pipes of all three types: welded, screwed, and as-cast flanged pipes. Varying with external conditions, Electrosteel offers a wide variety of protective, application-specific external coatings and internal linings. External coatings range from standard zinc and bitumen coatings to polyurethane, zinc aluminium alloy and fusion bonded epoxy coatings, besides providing polysleeving in aggressive soil conditions. Internally, pipes are normally cement mortar lined, where the type of cement is customized according to fluid characteristics. Special linings such as liquid epoxy lining, bitumen or epoxy seal coat over cement mortar is also available. Ceramic epoxy lining is applied to resist high abrasion. Castings for ductile iron fittings are made with the modern lost foam process. It scores on higher productivity, excellence of finish, uniform thickness, and best of all, high dimensional accuracy, so vital for precise leak-tight fitment. Available ductile iron fittings include those with push-on joints, flange joints, mechanical joints, and restraint joints. Special fusion bonded epoxy coating system ensures excellent finish and high durability. Restraint joint pipes and fittings, developed as a speciality by Electrosteel, dispense with the need for costly concrete thrust blocks for fail-safe transmission of fluids at high pressure. Electrosteel is a total solution provider in drinking water supply and distribution systems. Its team of professionals, equipped with the latest design software, can provide customized solutions during project conceptualization and design. It also provides detailed on-the-spot technical guidance during installation to ensure proper laying of pipelines as specified. A dedicated wing undertakes execution of complete customer-specified water supply systems on a turnkey basis. Electrosteel had the unique distinction to become one of the first ductile iron pipe manufacturers in the world to earn the ISO 14001 certification. A diverse range of in-plant pollution control systems has made it a clean and green plant, winning environmental awards. Recycling waste material in various stages of the production process to the maximum extent, and also conserves energy, reducing the carbon footprint. As a definite step towards reducing the carbon footprint, the 12 megawatt power plant at Haldia, based on heat from waste gas, is a clean development mechanism project. It is registered with the United Nations Framework Convention for Climate Change under the Kyoto Protocol. As one of the world's largest in its field, Electrosteel has already been involved in more than 8,000 water and wastewater projects, installing its ductile iron pipes and fittings. A dedicated customer base of more than 500 water management authorities scattered over 5 continents rely on Electrosteel products. Electrosteel is steadfast in its commitment to enhance shareholder value with consistent financial performance. A unique family of over 3,000 professionals, harnessed by teamwork and motivated to achieve, is the most vital resource of Electro Steel. With capabilities tested and proven world-class as it grows, Electro Steel is steady on its course to a sustainable global leadership. It promises and delivers.
Welcome to the world of Tata Steel, a flagship company of the global business conglomerate, the Tata Group. Tata Steel is one of the world's most geographically diversified steel producers, with operations and commercial presence across the world. The story began with the dream of one man, Jamsetji Nusserwanji Tata, a pioneer, a visionary, a man ahead of his times. He had his heart set on building a steel plant in India that would compare with the best globally. His dream was brought to fruition by his son, Dorabji Tata, and thus was born Tata Iron and Steel in Jamshedpur in 1907. At the turn of the 21st
Good afternoon, Chairman. Good afternoon, Mr. Dewan.
Good afternoon.
Just got a call from Dr. Krishnamurthy's office. He is going to join in at about 12:40. He just called. So we will start normally and he will join in the program.
Is that a good thing to do? Because we may...
Is centered around him.
I don't know. He's joining about, so we just called up.
So we can wait for a few minutes and then...
It is appropriate to wait because when Abhijit speaks, the guest has to be around.
Yeah.
Right. Sure. We'll wait for a bit.
Who's your guest?
Is it the Chief Economic Advisor, Mr. Kaul, Dr. Krishnamurthy Subramaniam?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So who's following up on his joining from Delhi? Somebody's following up?
We are doing it from here. We just spoke to him about 5 minutes ago.
Okay. And what did he say?
He's joining in at 12:40.
At 40, 12:40.
12:40, yes, correct.
Okay. So why don't you allow people to have a chat with each other in the meantime? Maybe a good idea. A little bit of camaraderie. So we can say hello to our friends and my particular friend, Sanjay Budia, Vice Chairman Sanjay Budia, and the incoming Chairman, Mr. Vijay Diwal. And where is the outgoing, chair? There is Abhijit. There was a great morning session. And Abhijit, I don't know whoever did the Superman bit, but that was outstanding. It was, I've been around for many decades in CII. It's the first time I've seen such an innovation, right? In terms of the outgoing chairman or president's address.
Yeah, someone from the secretariat, obviously, it's been kept a secret so far.
No, but the point is, whoever did it has innovation in his or her blood.
Yes, true.
So we need to get the secret out of Sekat.
Is it part of the Berger Paint ad or something?
Nothing to do with Berger on this.
But I'm sure it can be used now.
It was quite colorful though, and can be a useful tool for.
It's well thought of.
Yeah. Hello, Mr. Budia. How are you?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Hello, CV.
Hi.
Mr. Director General, sir. Salam. Salam.
The flag with the Director General is looking great. All the meetings.
Admiral was here. He suddenly switched off, or where's he gone?
I saw him in the morning session.
I saw him a minute ago or 2 minutes ago, and then
he's joining from Delhi, no? He's just joining from Delhi.
Okay.
I think because of the 12:40, he must have switched off and will come back possibly.
Yeah. So I think if anybody else asks a question, you say any moment.
So Sanjay, did you see the morphing of the photographs of Abhijit in the morning?
Sorry, I missed the morning session. I had gone for vaccination.
That's an idea for you for your next photographs in the media.
Yeah, it was very nice. There was a message and a video right in the end showing Abhijit looking the other way. You see his head with the helmet, etc., dressed like, I couldn't make out whether it was Superman, Batman, or what man, but certainly an absolute hero. And then they say a lot of things, and suddenly he removes his helmet and turns around, and there you see our truly chairman, right? Abhijit Roy, looking and giving a parting message.
Wow.
That was really well done.
I'm sure Sekat will share some of those images.
So
yeah, we can.
It was written as not Spider-Man or whatever. It was called Roy Man.
Abhijit, quick question. Since we are starting 10 minutes late, so do we have the 10 additional minutes for the session? And do we know from the CA's office, while he's joining 10 minutes late, is he also there with us for that remaining period? Because if he's giving us only the 20 minutes, then we'll have to maximize that with him.
That's true. That's true.
Maybe somebody should just quickly check that will he stay on then till 1:25.
I'll ask someone, yes, Saikat, if you're there.
Yes, we are following up with his office. He said he'll join in at 12:40. And we'll start off immediately and he will give those 10 minutes beyond 1:15.
Okay.
That's fine.
I'll just also text him. Yeah.
And when is the next session due? Are we going to postpone that as well?
That we have kept a gap of about 5 minutes. We will push it back by another 5 to accommodate this time.
Announce that. I think it will make more sense. It will start at 1:30.
We have the time, Chairman.
Okay.
When is the AGM, national AGM?
We're doing it the second half of April.
Second half.
Yeah.
Virtual?
Yes.
Hi, Admiral. How are you?
Good morning. Morning, everybody. Morning, Abhijit.
Good
morning,
afternoon.
CB.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. How are you, CB?
Hey, I'm doing well. Surviving.
Good to hear that after the last ARM of Eastern region, you haven't traveled.
Yeah.
Same is the case with me. The last time I was out of Delhi was in Calcutta for the ARM last year.
Yeah. We all got stuck at our respective places.
I have traveled out of Delhi, but I have traveled by car. I have not used the plane.
Same thing. Yeah. I went all the way to Puri, a 10-hour journey almost by car.
Yeah.
You went all the way to Kedarnath as well. We all are looking at your expedition.
Yeah. That was.
How was the experience?
Hello.
Abhijit, how was the experience of climbing all the way in the Himalayas in Kedarnath?
That was also only virtual.
Okay.
These are all Superman tricks. Why are you asking?
I was wondering, in this time, venturing into Himalayas.
Yeah, no.
But travel is coming back. It's not that bad. Means India had about 2,500 flights, as I keep saying, before COVID. 2,200 are back in the air. So it's back quite well.
No, younger people, they have started moving around, and there is lesser risk also, and then so there's no problem for them actually. But the people with other issues, they need to be careful still till we get vaccinated.
Unfortunately, in the last 1 week, 10 days, Maharashtra especially, and even in Delhi, which had gone down to 100, is now 430 or something.
Yeah, even West Bengal has started climbing now.
So there is a upward trend all around. So that's
true.
the fear.
Unfortunate, but we were thinking that we will escape this. But as of now, it's still under control, but it is increasing.
Yeah, last week, it has.
But what I found very surprising was in the last evening's the T20 match, there were so many people in the stadium, it was packed, and very few of them were wearing masks.
That's true.
So they were unmasked, and I really don't know. I mean, the next place, I think, after Maharashtra may well be Ahmedabad and then Gujarat. I mean, the way they were, I don't know if anybody else saw that T20.
Yeah, we all saw that.
It was very crowded and we
were also disappointed after the high of the test matches.
Yes, true.
Yeah.
Election rallies, election rally, almost 8 to 10 lakh people at the Maidan, as they claim, means nobody was wearing, no protection.
No.
Yeah, that's probably one of the reasons why it's spiking here also.
There are some worrying trends. So
Yeah, it will be a sinusoidal curve always. It will go up, you will take caution, it will go down, you forget about your caution, again it will go up. It will be always sinusoidal curve. I mean, see Germany, see Italy. Italy from today is going on lockdown. Germany was up to 7. Now it has gone down, they're opening it up. I'm sure after a month, it will shot up.
So the worrying thing is about these negative reports on the vaccine, particularly Covishield, being stopped in 3 countries in the Europe, and even Thailand stopping Covishield. So that could
was it Covishield or something else, Vijay?
AstraZeneca. The AstraZeneca.
Not Covishield. Don't get me worried. I've had Covishield 1 shot and I'm due for my 2nd now.
Don't worry.
Vijay, don't get me worried.
Don't worry. Statistics is always lie, damn lie statistics.
After this session, I think we can ask all the questions there.
No, Rajiv, Covishield is AstraZeneca.
Yes.
Is it?
Yeah. It's AstraZeneca. The point is, the amount of bad news is too minuscule to be taken care of. That's my
But
point.
anyway, there were only 3 cases out of 2 million. So that, I'm willing to take that kind of chance.
Yeah.
No, I went for what I think 6 weeks to London in the middle without any vaccines, etc. My wife accompanied me, so there was no problem at all. We wore our masks, we wore our face shield, right, and we were using disinfectant, wipes, Savlon wipes regularly.
Yeah.
But if Sanjeev Bajaj is on the line, Mr. Vice President, could you give us the prognosis on Maharashtra, where you're very much in the thick of things?
Sure, Mr. Kaul, and I think just for everybody to know, it appears that we are even live streaming this. So,
oh, is it?
It appears so, right? There's a
Yeah, you're right
over there. No, I think in Maharashtra, it's a combination of the fact that, as somebody said also, whether we are seeing it in different states or other parts of the world, things are opening up, people are getting fed up. And we're seeing it more this time with the youngsters, because the youngsters are the ones who are getting impatient. So even in our own offices, we can see despite fines and other things, they'll obey the rules for a few days, then again somebody messes up. That seems to be one issue. The second is that Maharashtra has upped its testing quite a bit. And while positivity is a little higher, the good thing is that the death rate has come down as a percentage dramatically, which means that the virus is spreading minute you open up. But for multiple reasons that we know of, from the fact that our doctors know a lot more now how to handle the virus in the early stage to prevent it from getting fatal, the medications that are available, the result is that fatalities are low. That is the good thing. I think beyond that, it's all about vaccination now. The more people that get vaccinated, it not only takes care of you and the elderly around you, but at some percentage of vaccinations, it will break the chain of the virus. And, people talk of mutation. There are mutations of the virus that happen every week. We've just been fortunate that we've not so far had a fatal mutation in India, but there is no guarantee we will not have one. And that's why, despite some of the adverse events, and that you also talked about, Mr. Kaul, the overwhelming evidence so far, in a situation that all these vaccines, our understanding of the disease is very new. We can wait 5 years for the top vaccines to come out, but you know what will happen till then. So we have to take it with unfortunately, with a pinch of salt, knowing that yes, some people will face those adverse situations, but the vast majority will pull through.
No, that's true.
Thank you, Sanjeev.
I think we are 12:40.
Is he joining?
Yes, he's just joining. Just spoke to his office, Chairman. He's going to come in 1 minute. He just spoke to him. He's not in.
Let's wait.
Chairman, Mr. CA has just joined. Good afternoon, Dr. Subramaniam.
Very good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Chairman, without much ado,
Joining at 12:40.
Yeah.
So my talk is at 12:45. So,
Chairman, we can start off the program, please.
Right. Thank you, Saigat. Dr. Krishnamurthy Subramanian, Chief Economic Advisor, Department of Economic Affairs, Ministry of Finance, Government of India. Mr. Sanjeev Bajaj, Vice President, CII, and Chairman and Managing Director, Bajaj FinServ. Mr. Chandrajit Banerjee, Director General, CII. Mr. Vijay Diwan, Deputy Chairman, CII Eastern Region, and MD and CEO, Park Hotels. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is both a pleasure and privilege to be here with you today. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all and also to thank you for joining us for what promises to be a really exciting time at the annual regional meeting and conference on transformed landscape of business, the evolving strategies. On behalf of CII Eastern Region and my personal behalf, I welcome all of you to this annual regional meeting 2021 and the conference. We at CII are committed to the goal of growth that is equitable and sustainable. It is our privilege to have with us today Dr. Krishnamurthy Subramanian, Chief Economic Advisor, Department of Economic Affairs, Ministry of Finance, Government of India. We would be eagerly looking forward to listening to your views, sir. I welcome Mr. Sanjeev Bajaj, Vice President CII and Chairman and Managing Director, Bajaj FinServ. I also welcome Mr. Chandrajit Banerjee, Director General CII, for his presence here today. Friends, the past year has been like no other in recent history, with the advent of a devastating pandemic that has upended normal life and economic activity across the world. With unprecedented lockdowns at different types in different countries, the tentacles of recession hit most economies. As we step into 2021, many large economies, including India, have commenced the process of inoculating their populations, which is likely to take a few months. Positive signs and new trends characterize the new world that we now find ourselves in. The key imperatives today are normalizing lives, restoring livelihoods, and reviving growth, which resonates with CII's theme of building India for a new world, lives, livelihood, growth. The theme reflects his aspirational role to work with the government and to bring back growth to the economy and mitigate the enormous human cost of the pandemic by protecting jobs and livelihoods. As the economy begins to restore itself, one major challenge will be to create jobs as also to improve the quality of jobs. The experiences of workers, many of whom were migrant laborers whose livelihoods were destroyed at the onset of the pandemic, will not be forgotten. New jobs that are created must be accompanied with an improvement in the facilities provided, such as housing and access to health and education. The share of formal employment needs to be increased, a trend that has already started and will certainly be enhanced in 2021. At the same time, Informal employment and fixed term employment will come with greater social security. The COVID-19 pandemic played havoc around the globe, virtually bringing to a halt multifarious activities, including the functioning of schools, colleges, and universities, both at major educational hubs and campuses, and also in small towns and villages. Friends, the humankind has witnessed the worst ever pandemic, shaking the core beliefs, purpose, and DNA of everyone. With so many lives and livelihoods impacted, enterprises are on the cusp of a massive transformation. The old models, paradigms, processes, hierarchies are making way to newer business models and agile and nimble ways of functioning. In the near future, organizations will witness dramatic shifts in key drivers and purpose. As a result, leadership skills, competencies, and behaviors will need to shift for delivering higher productivity in a reset enterprise. The pandemic has proved that people and organizations are capable of tremendous growth under the pressure of a crisis. The challenge for many will be to sustain that momentum, to discover new ways to thrive in the long term, even as disruption constantly resets the path forward. In spite of all odds faced by every section of the society, we have seen organizations, corporates going beyond their capacity to stand together against the global threat. It speaks volumes about the hidden aspirations and positivity among organizations to extend their support to the society whenever there was a need. The pandemic has made the past year one of the most painful in recent history, but fortunately, it has ended with the creation of effective vaccines. It is therefore natural that 2021 embodies hope for a better future. It is essential that all stakeholders combine forces to make this a reality, with partnerships across countries, across public and private sectors, across government and civil society. The aim of today's conference on transformed landscape of business, the evolving strategies, is to deliberate on the role that industry has undertaken and must undertake for creating a necessary ecosystem for inclusive growth and development in the nation, with major thrust on getting growth back. We will deliberate on the new, disruptive, and evolving strategies, unique business models, and also focus on creating the next level of strategies for sustainable business growth. Ladies and gentlemen, let me not stand in the way of a very interesting day and a very interesting session ahead of us. Once again, I welcome you all to the annual regional meeting 21 and to the wonderful conference on transformed landscape of business, evolving strategies. Thank you. May I now request Mr. Chandrajit Banerjee, Director General, Confederation of Indian Industry, to address us.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Abhijit, and good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome also, may I add, to Dr. Krishnamurthy Subramaniam for making it being here today at the background of the CII's Eastern Region's annual regional meeting. And Dr. Subramaniam, we are concluding, in a way, year-long celebrations of CII's 125 years. And 125 years back, CII started its humble beginnings in Calcutta, and therefore it's quite great to have you over here, which is the Eastern Region celebrations, and to as you know, to talk to you in a course of more of a conversation will be Sanjeev Bajaj, the CII's Vice President. I must tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that Dr. Subramaniam has been one of the busiest persons in the last couple of weeks, couple of months, if I can say, in the country, having presented the eco survey. And since the budget came up, and even a few days before the budget and after the budget, he has been continuously interacting with various stakeholders, not just the industry, with the CII, but across the spectrum, across the globe, talking about the perspectives, what has gone in, the huge enthusiasm which one has seen after the budget came up from many stakeholders, again, talking to them and understand and really deliberating as to how on the way forward as far as the economic landscape is concerned. So today we are discussing the transformed landscape of business and evolving strategies. So in the background of a phenomenal budget, which has been really appreciated by all sections of the Indian industry and from CII, it's so great to have him here today. And it's very, very significant indeed, I must say. As Abhijit was mentioning, 2020 would, we all keep saying that will go down in history as one of the most challenging times business has ever known. And in the last 100 years, we have not seen a situation of this kind. And I'm sure that is true also for the government as well. And in dealing with the very, very unprecedented year, the government, I must say, introduced some very important and timely interventions through relief packages and really addressed all vulnerable sections of the society, as well as industry ourselves. As CII, we have noted and appreciated some of the important initiatives which were taken by the government to support and all to keep really the economic activities going. And as we have entered into a new normal, and as we are likely to transit into a series of never normals, businesses have to really evolve new strategies that will drive livelihood creation and new wealth and incomes. So today's conference on the transformed landscape of businesses, the evolving strategies that will really deliberate on the role of industry in inclusive growth and development in the nation, with the focus of getting growth back. And there, all of us would look forward to Dr. Subramaniam's inputs on this. And as I was talking about, in the past 1 year of CII, we have been actively providing a lot of inputs to the central government for the right investment environment, be it ease of doing business, weeding out redundant laws, or digitization of the government's processes. And I must say our recommendations have been viewed very positively by the government and found place in some key policies, such as setting up of a bad bank and the development financial institution, which was something which we have been talking about. And industry can find many, many new opportunities in the schemes, such as the government working on or the PLI, the National Investment Pipeline, and the government's spending program. At the same time, the use of technology has really accelerated tremendously, and that's and industry is driving a new wave of growth based on increased productivity arising from technology intensity, if I can say. And digital technology is also creating a new space in a range of sectors, including healthcare, which we will discuss very soon in this conference, education. And India really is being seen as a strong leading destination for cost-effective, high value-added technology and innovation-led manufacturing. And in addition to all of this, we are also seeing a shift in the global trade and investment ecosystem. And countries and global businesses are really seeking to diversify their economic interactions in its effort. And India is indeed very well positioned to capture this new space. And the new model of business strategy which is evolving into is more like as an absolutely outward looking concept. And today we are looking at these and the other shifts and trends and how businesses can really leverage these to their advantage, which would lead into a more robust, inclusive, and a more sustainable growth process in India. And we have one of the greatest thinkers, if I can say, of our times with us here today, who will elaborate further on this evolving landscape for business. And I must once again appreciate and really acknowledge the partnership that one has seen of the government, Dr. Krishnamurthy Subramaniam's and all his colleagues, I must say, in partnering with industry, in partnering with us in terms of understanding the pain points and responding so very strongly. So we are indeed privileged to have him as the chief guest of this function. And with him in conversation will be Sanjeev Bajaj, as I said. And Dr. Subramaniam has been regularly interacting with us, a man of, if I can say, a man of many ideas, a man also of a lot of action. And he was just yesterday talking to us about the ease of doing business and R&D by MNCs. and suggested that CII do a report on how to set up a portal on deemed approvals and single window clearances with center and states on a single platform. And he also suggested that SEZ should be reviewed with a new format. Besides the broad strategies, we have always found that he is really focused on the details and the transition of policies on the ground. Earlier, of course, I talked to you about the number of post-budget interactions that we have had with him. His strategies for a new wave of growth are today, in fact, shaping the economic environment. And many of these policy suggestions are being translated into action, such as the counter-cyclical fiscal policy and the fiscal relaxation that we have seen in the budget. And he is not really constrained in thinking by his typical neoclassical economic theories, and has always shown us some very out-of-the-box paths for recovery and growth. And in his pro-growth, pro-reforms approach, he is feeding into policies for transforming our economic landscape. So who better than him to give this opening session the type of shot in the arm that many of us have got and many of us are looking forward to in these days. And this really converges very well with this Sanjeev Bajaj's expertise. Sanjeev is one of our leading business luminaries and is driving new ideas in the financial sector. We have seen the phenomenal growth in his company, the way he has taken his company in the last few years, and he has introduced new ways of doing business in his sectors, strong focus on business strategy development, young business wizard, if I may say. He has his company to become one of the best performing in the entire sector of financial services, and in fact outperformed the entire industry, Sanjeev. And I'm sure that today we would have a most engaging and a thought-provoking session, which will bring out many new ideas from both our speakers, industry, and this luminary from the government. And with this, I would really once again welcome both of you and Dr. Subramaniam, you especially, and hand it over to Sanjeev to take this discussion session forward. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, CB, and good afternoon, everyone. Friends, we've already heard about the difficult year that we've gone through. We know it's been a year of grief, of pain, whether as a society, whether as individual business or families. But it's also a year that has taught us greater resilience, given us new hope, but also put newer responsibilities as we rebuild our economy, our society, and take care of building the path going ahead. In this context, Dr. Subramaniam, we would love to hear your views on both current and near-term macroeconomic changes as per you, and how you think that is likely to affect business, how policy assistance has been provided very proactively over the past, especially over the past 8-9 months by the government to help salvage the economy. And also, as per you, what do you think industry needs to do to recalibrate itself to emerge from this pandemic, not only stronger, but a lot more confident to build the future of India that we know is an opportunity that is available only for us to lose? So with that, let me hand it over to you. And at the end, if you have time, then we'll take a few questions. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Sanjeev, and thanks CB, Vijit, and all the eminent dignitaries for inviting me to share my thoughts. I think it's very apt that we focus on the role that industry can play going forward. If you see the big idea that has emerged in India's economic thinking post the pandemic, it is the emphasis on the role of the private sector. This is a very important distinction that I want to make. The clarion call given by the Honorable Prime Minister for Atmanirbhar Bharat actually relies on empowering and enhancing the role of the private sector. There are two key differences compared to the pre-91 experiment that India had. One is the distinction between self-sufficiency versus self-reliance. Atmanirbharta means self-reliance. That's one key difference. And second is about, the how. So there is a difference in the what and the difference in the how. Let me focus on the what, which is the self-sufficiency versus self-reliance. Self-sufficiency, sort of conceptually, all of us, at least economists think about an island, where Robinson Crusoe is self-sufficient, selling coconuts in return for, fish. But self-reliance actually is about capabilities, and all of us who've gone to various undergraduate institutions here in India and the world would acknowledge that, capabilities are built through competition. The most capable individuals actually emerge by overcoming competition. And if you, take an individual, a company, or a country, a self-reliant individual cannot be one without capability. Show me a self-reliant individual and I'll show you a capable one. Show me a self-reliant company and I'll show you a capable company. Similarly, show me a self-reliant country, it cannot be one without actually capabilities. I think that is a very important difference in terms of the what, and therefore competition is extremely important in this aspect. Now, the difference in the how. The big difference is that pre-91 India tried to build a self-sufficient India by focusing on the public sector, by giving the commanding heights of the economy to the public sector. Our first prime minister did a lot of good things, but when the word profit was mentioned in front of him, he said, don't ever mention that dirty word in front of me. It's a different matter though that in our own daily life we actually go, we write Shubh Labh always together. Shubh is good and Labh is profit. That's what has been part of our DNA. And as it turns out, as the last year's economic survey clearly showed by documenting Angus Madison's research, that India was the dominant economy up till 1750 AD, accounting for 1/3 of world's GDP at least, and that for 17 and a half centuries. To just get the gigantic, amount of dominance, let's do these comparisons just so that, we all actually get over this inferiority complex in terms of, economic aspects and keep looking to the West. Just imagine this. The United States, which is, regarded as the dominant economy, has at its peak contributed about 15-16% of world's GDP for half a century. Put those two facts together, half a century vis-a-vis 17 and a half centuries, and at a maximum of 15-16% versus 33%. And then you will get the kind of dominance that we had. And such kind of dominance does not happen by sheer luck. It happens because of the nature of the economic model that actually was pursued. And that is why I think it's important to actually recognize what has been in our DNA. And that is about ethical wealth creation, which is the aspect that I want to focus on. And the ethical wealth creation is about the marriage of the invisible hand of markets and the hand of trust. And that's where I want to focus on, where India is changing now the economic thinking. We are going back to our DNA, saying that this is what we were actually. After all, 5 decades is just ephemeral in a history of millennia. So the 5 decades of socialistic thought that we had is but ephemeral in a history of millennia, where ethical wealth creation was what was really pursued, and that led to the dominance. So India is going back to its DNA. In this, pursuit of going back to our DNA, what is the role that the private sector must play? The government has clearly recognized that we need to empower the private sector, we need to enable the private sector, and therefore we need to withdraw wherever actually government has no role. If government, in sectors where government has no business being in business, we should be getting out. We should be actually, removing some of the restrictions, some of the difficulties that business faces, and thereby empower the private sector. So that's, the government's thinking. But I want to today elaborate on what I think about actually the private sector's role role in enabling this idea. And, we have to recognize, when 50 years of socialistic thought has also affected the private sector's own thinking about, its own role and that of the government. But here's where actually I want to focus that with the change that is happening, I think the change in mindset needs to equally happen for the private sector. And there are two key aspects that I want to focus on, which is ethical and wealth creation. I think, when I talk about wealth creation, I always pair it with ethical wealth creation. I think it's important to recognize that if you go and read, Tiruvalluvar's Tirukkural, written millennia back, in my native language, Tamil, in the shloka, 112, in chapter 11, he says that the just man's wealth, unwasting, shall endure, and to his race a lasting joy endure. The just man. And this is basically about generating wealth, shubh and labh. We never wrote ashubh and labh. We actually always wrote shubh and labh. In other words, do good, and in the process, you actually generate wealth. That is the idea that India actually has, that's what led to that success, which then means that, things like crony lending, crony capitalism, profiteering versus profiting, these are important aspects that are not consistent with ethical wealth creation. Let me, point out some evidence. In this year's economic survey, for instance, in the chapter on healthcare, we showed that if you look at the, and this is using Ayushman Bharat, data from Ayushman Bharat, across different, procedures, whether it's inpatient procedures or outpatient procedures, across every procedure, whether you take cardiac procedure, gastroenteritic procedure, injuries, when a patient goes to the private sector hospital, he or she pays 6 to 7 times more than in a public hospital. Now, the first concern that would come is maybe this is because the quality of care that is being provided by the private sector is much better. And, that's a concern we also went and explored in the data. Turns out, and using healthcare research, one of the most often used proxies for the quality of healthcare, which is readmission rates. And when you look at readmission rates, what you find is, if anything, the readmission rates are higher in the private sector than in the public sector. Now, put these two pieces of facts together and then relate it with the idea of ethical wealth creation that I'm talking about profiteering versus profit, which is shubh and labh, actually, profit, not profiteering. And that is why we're actually, going back to the idea that was put out by Nobel laureates. We've talked about a regulator, because I think that's also important. Profiteering is not consistent with ethical wealth creation. The other related aspect, therefore, is, when we think about capabilities, when we think about, self-reliant companies actually do the activities themselves, don't necessarily need a Baisakhi, as they say, in Hindi, for them to be able to do and this is a mindset change that is equally required in the private sector. And I want to focus on, in the last 2.5 years, we've been part of many deliberations. Whenever budget deliberations are held, one finds that about 8 to 10 suggestions that come from the industry are about, reduce the tax here, reduce the tax there, and every sector comes around and says the same thing. What we have to recognize is that if taxes are reduced across every sector, there's only, it's a finite thing, right? The other important thing, which is conceptually to remember, is when you look at the economy, level of the economy, a tax is but a transfer, from the private sector to the public sector. It does not expand the pie. I think the mindset change that is required is for private sector to focus on increasing that pie. The amount of resources that are possibly spent on, reducing taxes, the same resources, if they are spent on actually coming up with a better business strategy, coming up with a better organizational strategy, I think that would grow the pie. There'll be more for everybody. So this focus on, rather than thinking about transfers, and remembering that tax is but a transfer at the macroeconomic level, focus on the, on expanding the pie. I think that's left, one key point. Second, which is that when, we're talking about, for instance, research and development, if you look at the Indian private sector, compared to the OECD economies, spends far less on research. The contribution to gross expenditure on R&D is less than a half of what the private sector does in other countries. That also means long-run thinking, visionary thinking. Remembering that innovation is something that requires investment for a while before the fruits start coming. But those fruits are much more enduring, much more long-term. So these are important aspects, and even in this actually, and we've shown it very clearly, it's not as if R&D incentives in India are any less than other countries. If anything, they're actually as liberal. So, the idea has to be that for our own profits, for our own competitive position, we need to innovate. When the idea comes actually that, oh, let's do innovation, oh, can the government do something about it, give a tax incentive here, a tax incentive there? No. Think about it from the perspective of your own competitive, position, and just focus on, I think, on doing what is right for you. That is the counterpart to, to wealth creation and, self-reliance based on capabilities, which is that a capable individual looks to do things himself or herself. And I think that is an idea that the private sector also needs to imbibe if this idea of building a self-reliant India, with two to tango, the government and the private sector has to fructify. So, that's something which I wanted to focus on, this big picture idea. Of course, we can talk about some of the details, in the Q&A, but I thought this is a very important aspect for us to really realize that dream of becoming a dominant economy once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Subramanian, and I'm assuming that you have time for us to go through a few questions in your asks, and I would also say expectations from the private sector. You've clearly laid out the concept of Shubha Labh versus profiteering. You've talked about the need to be self-reliant and proactive. You've talked about increasing the pie rather than just thinking of how to further cut the pie up. And you've talked about research, which again goes towards being both proactive and at the same time self-reliant. Now, I want to take you to a question which is going to come up soon. Is one of the worries is that inflation is starting to rise. Now, you've been one of the proponents who have said that for a country like India, maybe there has to be a review of the inflation target range, because we are not a developed country. We are not a working capital country. We are still a capex country that needs heavy investment. And nobody's saying to go to the what happened in Latin America and get to big double-digit inflation, but slightly higher inflation could actually be good. Now, a lot of people don't understand this. A lot of people don't know what it means. If there are any thoughts that you can share on this, I'm sure the audience would love to hear.
I think this is a question, Sanjeev, that we can talk about it for just 40-45 minutes just on this topic itself. It's a expansive and at the same time in-deep topic. I'll just lay out a few things conceptually, but I don't think I'll be able to do justice to the fantastic question that you've asked because of the limitations of time. Suffice to say a couple of things. I think if you see whether it's actually the 2018-19 economic survey, the last year's 2019-20, or this one, what we have believed is that India, when faced with various trade-offs, whether it's growth versus inequality, whether it's growth versus inflation, whether it's, for instance, growth versus debt sustainability, India needs to focus on growth. Macroeconomics is all about trade-offs. All of economics is about trade-offs. And therefore, having the correct objectives is by far the most important for policy prescriptions to follow. And I think, I cannot emphasize this enough, that India, at the stage at which we are in, we must be focusing on growth. And whenever push comes to shove, when there is a trade-off involved, we must be leaning on growth. I think that's the most important point that I want to lay out. And the details of some of these, I think we can talk about it later. Right? In the context of your question, I think this is the big picture response that is by far the most important.
Thanks. No, I think that's useful. And as you said, we can speak long enough, but I think even for our viewers, that's useful input. The next one, and again on the fiscal side, is that the government very clearly has laid down a 4-year fiscal glide path towards getting back to fiscal prudence. Now, I want our members to know that to take us down that glide path and come to a more normalized deficit, it is going to be both execution on the government side with a number of the large announcements they've talked about, but there is an equal responsibility on the private sector, because eventually you have to expand the pie. That is the only way you will get the numerator, denominator back in control. Just your own sense when you look at a 4-year glide path, that how much do you expect the government to do initially to kickstart this, or how much is required, versus I'm sure in your numbers you must have built in some assumptions of when private sector starts kicking in and when it takes over. So any ideas again from your side?
Again, I think a very good question. A question that we could again speak for half an hour. Let me give a short enough response, but highlight what I think is important. If you think about the kind of back of the thumb wisdom that has been provided on whether it's on fiscal deficits or on debt to GDP ratios, etc. A lot of that has come from what is called this Maastricht agreement, which talks about 3% fiscal deficit and 60% as debt to GDP. One key aspect, and I'm yet to see careful research that backs either of those numbers. I'll just point out, this paper by Reinhardt and Rogoff. Many of you might have actually known about it for the controversy that it created because of some numbers. But I think, what is important is, despite whatever, small errors were there, the conclusion that Reinhardt and Rogoff had, which is that even when debt to GDP goes up to 90% for advanced economies, growth does not actually taper off. Now, I think that's one key piece of evidence which calls into question the 60% debt to GDP ratio that the Maastricht agreement sort of seem to talk about. When we think about advanced economies and compare that to emerging economies like ours, where we face a lot of frictions, especially populations that are credit constrained, there are a lot of people that cannot go and borrow. And so, the importance of possibly government borrowing vis-a-vis, others, and to be able to do capex spending, for instance, becomes really critical. And, you said this in your question as well. At the stage at which we are, we need to be spending a lot on capex. And therefore, what we have to focus on is, and this is now, it's very clear research, macroeconomic research highlights it very clearly, that when you get growth, you get, that debt sustainability follows. And we've seen this in the Indian context as well. If you look at the period after the Asian financial crisis, we had spent a lot to actually build the golden quadrilateral, for instance. Capex had increased a lot. I know historically at that time, the highest debt to GDP ratio, about 83 to 85%, was achieved. But as we got growth back of 8% plus for the next 6-7 years, that debt to GDP ratio came back to about 70%. I think this concept that we've highlighted in this year's economic survey, the second chapter, that as long as the cost of borrowings for the government is lower than the growth rate, as long as you're using apples to apples, either both real quantities or both nominal quantities, as long as that gap stays, I think, debt remains sustainable. So these are important points that we must be keeping in mind, especially the fact that we need to grow through capex, and public capex is important to crowd in private investment. And that goes back to your, to the sequencing as well. If you, recall the 2018-19 economic survey, what we did there was we basically looked at every country that grew at 5% plus in real terms for at least a decade. So in other words, not ephemeral growth, 5% plus for at least a decade over the last 50 years. And what clearly what we gathered through scholarly research is that happens through a virtuous cycle that starts from private investment. Private investment leads to productivity improvements, jobs are created, growth happens, that puts money in the hands of people, which furthers consumption, and then anticipating that consumption, private sector invests more. So that is how the cycle goes on. And as you will be seeing, now we're almost at 10, 20-year high in terms of the investment sentiment. So this cycle is actually starting. You will see the impact on others with a lag. Doesn't happen immediately. Macroeconomic phenomena manifest with some lag, but this is the start of the cycle. It starts from private investment, and public investment is important to trigger that. So getting to about 35-40% of GDP as the gross fixed capital formation in the country is extremely important for this cycle to really move very fast. And that is where I think, again, the focus on growth. As I said, macroeconomics is all about trade-offs, but when we have this situation of, push comes to shove, we have to focus on growth.
Thanks. That's a very detailed explanation. My last question to you, because I know then you need to go as well, is a majority of our members at CII are MSME and SME, and they hurt the most when banks can't lend. And we've seen that with public sector banks, mainly in the last couple of years. And that's where CII talked about it, and the government has announced the bad bank. And I'm going to put you on the spot over here now, because if I remember right, you had a statement talking about the negatives of a bad bank, and we know the moral hazard issues it can create. I've always felt that there are times, so the analogy I draw is, if you have a lot of bad cholesterol in your body, you have to first think about today and take that cholesterol out. You have to take the medication. But you can't get hooked onto the medication and have recurrence. So you have to also then learn to live a healthier life.
Correct.
So just your thoughts on how the government hopes to go ahead with the bad bank, just the mechanics, whatever you're free to share. But more importantly, what is the intent of the government to ensure that the recurrence doesn't happen, the moral hazard doesn't happen?
I think that's again a very good question. So if you look at the idea, the sort of the details on the bad bank, the fact that this will basically be funded by the banks themselves, the ARC would actually be created by the banks with necessary guarantees from the government, because any situation of distress and bad assets in the financial sector involves what we economists call market failures. In and itself, financial sector itself involves a lot of market failures because of asymmetric information, which creates moral hazard and adverse selection problems. But these get exacerbated when you talk about bad assets, because far more judgment, far more uncertainty is involved, and that creates even more problems of asymmetric information. So therefore, whenever there are situations like that, there is need for intervention, and I think the government therefore is supporting this idea through guarantees. But I think the potential of moral hazard is was important, and that's why we've actually tried to equip this idea through the private sector with the government supporting that as much as then providing the necessary support, and the regulator also has been very, very forthcoming, and I think has been very open which must be commended the Reserve Bank has been very, very supportive in this. So while of course alternative solutions always have their trade-offs, I think this has been the considered view. In trying to take care of that bad cholesterol that you're talking about. Of course, when you have bad cholesterol, I think you have to live the day first. And that is why taking out the stock of bad cholesterol so that the flow of blood can start happening much better, is the basic idea but I will also take this opportunity to highlight a few other things in the financial sector, because I think it's possible that this year's budget might be remembered in a seminal manner for the for the measures that were initiated in the financial sector. Because, if you take the other big idea, which is on the DFI, Development Financial Institution, related to the earlier conversation that we were having on capex-driven growth. Now, when you have capex-driven growth, infrastructure becomes really critical. Infrastructure financing is a very specialized activity that banks are not necessarily best equipped to do. For instance, before my PhD, I used to work with ICICI for a couple of years. There used to be this infrastructure group within ICICI, which used to have specialized teams that would be experts in road projects, another team that would be expert in airport projects, port projects, etc. Because the functional knowledge that is required for each one of these is very different, and that is by far the sine qua non for infrastructure. And I think that is why the DFIs are important. Of course, from the financing perspective as well, patient capital, being able to get money from the pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, etc., so that you get that patient capital into DFIs is important. And there, not only creation of the public sector DFI, but also enabling of private sector DFIs in the legislation, I think is also consistent with this idea of the Atmanirbhar Bharat by empowering the private sector. So I think that's a second key aspect. Third, insurance, which is the increasing the FDI in insurance. Apart from credit, which is quite under-penetrated in India, insurance is another area where there's a lot of under-penetration and a lot of activity can happen. So I think that's another key aspect. I think finally the privatization of two public sector banks, which is, in the last year's economic survey, we actually looked at the golden jubilee of bank nationalization and had effectively said, I think it's time to start basically unwinding some of this. And I think this is the first step, and which may be very useful. Of course, there are important changes that are still required on the governance aspect of public sector bank, but I think this is a very, very bold and important move. So overall, when you put these together, you can start seeing why I'm convinced that this budget actually might possibly be looked at, for the seminal measures that it took for on the financial sector.
Completely agree with you. I think this can just be a game changer budget for the next, not 1-2 years, but for the next decade or two, along with everything else that the government has planned to do to open up India to the world, and with Make in India and everything else. We are all, of course, hoping that, the God, as they say, is in the execution. So we have to get that execution going, and I think it puts us onto a completely different platform. I truly believe that. Thanks so much for spending this time with us, and more than that, for answering in a simple way that most of us can understand. And Chandraji talked a few things about me, but I'm not the expert. My teams are the experts. But thanks so much for that. As you said, each of these answers can take a lot of time, and I know how busy you are, but at some point of time, on behalf of CII, I'll reach out also so we can have a more engaging one-on-one discussion. With that, let me hand it over.
Can I just, Sanjeev, just mention just a 30-second? You mentioned about execution. I think that's absolutely correct. But I do want to point out that, first, the conceptualization and the announcement is the necessary condition. The execution is a sufficient condition. The fact that we have actually, taken care of the necessary conditions is something that first, I think we must basically, all of us, together must pat ourselves on our back. And then say, yes, of course, the sufficient conditions still needs to be fulfilled, and that, really get empowered and actually get focused on that.
Absolutely. And we've all recognized and talked about the very bold necessary condition that was announced. And that's why putting the onus back on you all to ensure that it gets through the sufficient condition. But thank you. Thank you so much. With that, let me hand it over to Abhijit.
Thank you, Sanjeev and Dr. Krishnamurthy, for that very, very interesting discussion that we just had. This is also the time now to unveil this year's CSR Compendium for us. This annual publication captures information regarding CSR strategies, ongoing CSR projects, and success stories of different member companies in the Eastern region. The objective of the compendium is to present and share with a large cross-section of industry the initiatives and experiences of CII members that have been successful in creating an impact and touch the larger community. Can I ask the Secretariat to unveil the compendium, please? Thank you, everyone. I would now request Mr. Vijay Diwan, Deputy Chairman, CII Eastern Region, to deliver the concluding remarks.
Thank you, Abhijit. On behalf of CII Eastern Region and on my personal behalf, I would like to thank Dr. Krishnamurthy Subramaniam, Chief Economic Advisor, Department of Economic Affairs, Ministry of Finance, Government of India, for joining us today. It has been really an enriching experience listening to your views. We have been able to clearly understand where the government policy is going. We have been able to clearly understand what is the new way of looking at economy. We have clearly understood that the government is going to be completely focused on growth. We have also got the direction in which the industry has to move forward in terms of being self-reliant, and also it has to create wealth in an ethical manner. So thank you for setting this direction. And I would also like to thank Mr. Sanjeev Bajaj for asking the right and pertinent questions today. And also my special thanks to Mr. Chandrajit Banerjee. Getting sustained double-digit growth remains for us at the forefront of our agenda to protect as well as generate jobs and livelihoods. And this double-digit growth is only possible by greater integration of the East with the rest of the country. We need to maximize the potential and capitalize on the new opportunities being offered to us as we move from the new normal to the new future. Going forward, the Eastern Region Council will continue to work with all stakeholders to position East India as a preferred investment destination. Secondly, the Council will work to improve port, airport, logistic, health, and tourism infrastructure to bring it at levels with the rest of the country. Thirdly, we will work to ensure smooth and greater line of credit for the MSME sector. And lastly, to lead the Eastern sector in creating the EV infrastructure to reduce our reliance on oil and to improve our environment. The Eastern states have the potential to become a vibrant economy with robust growth in agriculture, industry, and services, thereby playing a crucial role in driving India's growth. We in the East have enough educated and skilled workforce and a unique geographical advantage of friendly neighbors in Bangladesh, Bhutan, and Nepal, and a close cultural and trade synergy with Thailand, Singapore, and Vietnam, which makes this region a very attractive destination. CII East, with the approval of the new council, plans to host a new flagship event, the East India Development and Investment Summit, towards the middle of the year. This event will have a special focus on infrastructure, private equity, and government investments. It is important that all stakeholders, center and state governments, industry, and society come together, think together, and work together to make this a success. And I look forward to your support, and especially the support of the central government towards this initiative. I also take this opportunity to thank all our sponsors. My special thanks to the delegates for joining us today. Your participation only creates success for this event at CII. Last but not the least, I thank all our friends from the media and the industry who have come and who are part of this important meeting. We have definitely a much more power-packed afternoon on this new evolving strategies and the new normal, and I'm sure we'll all gain for it. Thank you once again, Dr. Krishnamurthy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman, back to you.
Yeah, thank you all. So that brings us to the close of this session, and therefore now we wait for the next session to begin. I think We are slightly late, but I hope we can start in the next 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. We have had an enriching inaugural session. Now we move on to the first plenary session of the conference. We have with us Mr. Rajiv Kaul, past President CII and Chairman NICO Group, in conversation with Ms. Shobhana Kamineni, past President CII and Executive Vice Chairperson, Apollo Hospitals Enterprise Limited, to talk on vaccination and healthcare in the new normal. Over to you, Mr. Kaul.
Thank you very much, and a warm welcome to all of you who have been patiently listening on the various sessions. And it's a pleasure to have my dear friend and our past president of CII, Shobhana Kamineni, with us. And she is a brilliant person, truly outstanding president of CII. And she would be talking to us on healthcare and vaccination and other allied activities. But I must say that CII was indeed exceptionally proud when I think in our 120th year, we had our first lady president. I don't know what and why it took us so long, but Shobhana, I'm sure you have led the way for many other lady presidents to follow. We need certainly to be a little more, what should I say, a little more open and inclusive in our CII's leadership roles. Shobhana has championed many special initiatives, both in her own company and indeed in CII. And as the lead in Apollo's research and innovation activity, she has been really recognized by the Time magazine as what should I say, the innovator of the biobank, which was one of the top ideas, which was declared under life sciences by, as I said earlier, the Time magazine. Shobhana, you, along with your three sisters and under the able guidance and stewardship of your father, have built Apollo Healthcare Group into a huge enterprise with 71 hospitals, 1,200 beds, 85,000 doctors, 4,000 pharmacies, 30,000 employees, a group size which is growing and today over $2 billion US. But above all, I think you, your father, your sisters have converted Apollo Group into a global innovation company, propelling India into a leadership position. And all of us in CII and Indian industry are particularly proud of the leadership that your family and the five of you have given our country. So let me begin this conversation by asking you, Shobhana, if you could give us 3 ways by which during this pandemic, Apollo Group has been impacted, but impacted for the better, be it transformation, be it innovation, or be it digitization, or any other aspect that you would like to highlight. So over to you, Shobhana.
Hi, Rajiv. Thank you so much. And I think I'll get into all this, but first, thank you for all those kind words. Can you hear me well? Or should I?
Very well, very well.
Cool. So, you asked a very, I think that one of the most difficult questions, and I can tell you the pandemic hurt healthcare more than any other industry has been impacted. And let me give you a few things, that really, this is across the world. Across the world, we are astonished that so little preparedness. You would think that this is not something that was out of the realm. I mean, Wimbledon had insured, and even in insurance companies, everybody said the possibility of a pandemic, but this world was so unprepared for the speed at which it hit us. But India locked down, but so the way that it was handled, I think, is a real case study of different countries in the world that showed capability, and I think India in particular, because if you look at hospitals, I can tell you that our cohorts around the world have lost billions of dollars. Hospitals across the world, not just in India, in the initial years were decimated because our beds are empty, no patients can come to us, and keep your workforce had to be in preparedness, because we were continuously preparing for what we expected would be the wave that would come and hit us, almost tsunami. So the first few months was the preparedness of tsunami. Thankfully, I would give the government a lot of credit for the way that they locked down, for the way that they disseminated information to the public to be and to maintain whatever the norms were for to prevent the pandemic. And also there is an inherent immunity that we realized. But please remember, at the beginning of the pandemic, hospitals are empty, doctors have no access to the patients, patients have no access to healthcare. And I think during this critical time is when you really see that it's not the biggest that survive, it's the most agile. And this is there that across businesses that I've spoken to during the pandemic, they have had to change their business model. Fortunately for us, we were highly digital. I mean, we had started the digital innovation. I had started it 6 months before. So we launched it on February 5th, our digital. 22nd of March, the lockdown happened. In 45 days, we switched on 4,000 doctors and got them and said, now you can connect with your patients virtually. In 48 hours after the lockdown, we put out a scan. 15 million people downloaded it, and they had access to really telling them, what are the symptoms they could test. And with that, we were actually giving a full stack of how they could find a solution. So I think companies that were agile had to really pivot. And I'm talking about a 38-year company. So we come with so much baggage. But one thing we realized, so one is agility. The second is, I think that what we've realized during the pandemic is that every company has to be digital. We have to change our business model to find a way. And it's not just work from home, but it's many other things in how your processes work and how you can engage with your customers. Because now you'll have to find a way that you do it virtually, that you could disseminate information, probably give a service, have it, and these are things that are in the realm of possibility today. So we're going to see more and more of this happen. The very fact that e-commerce grew around the world, and even in India, it grew by 4% during the pandemic. And I think that 4% in terms of its overall numbers of how much it is of the GDP from 2%. So it was more than 100% growth, I would say. So from about 2.5% of organized retail, today e-commerce is about 4.5%. So I think this is significant in terms of how an industry has transformed and made itself relevant during this time. Coming to Apollo, another thing that we realized, and I think this is companies, not just Apollo, but it's a fantastic, this time in history. I think if you want to celebrate something, Rajiv, let us all celebrate the fact that humanity was first. So it was that we had frontline workers, and these people would still come to work. Our nurses from Kerala, their families called them back and they said no. So this was almost, so we could put it like the war of our generation. So they came out more selfless. But looking back, I really say that, can you imagine that you're risking your life not for a family member, you're risking your life for someone you don't even know, because you could contract it. And I think this is a very important thing, not just healthcare. It is other sectors also. People who were actually, hotels that had no business and maybe would not survive, restaurants, they were making meals for healthcare workers. So I think that as CII, as an industry body, we have always celebrated humanity, and this is something that is amazing. So, but the last thought I think that it's important that I leave you with is the very fact that, not only corporate CII, Apollo, and everyone else in this country, we made sure that we first fought this battle with very little information. We moved to 23 different protocols on how to treat COVID, from your plasma, from your that early this thing of the malaria medicine, HTQ, and so many things that were floating around. So I think at that time it was experiment over science. Thankfully, within a year, so think about the great evolution. It normally takes a vaccine almost 10 years and another 4 years to be, to come out into for public use. The world did everything in 1 year. So just think of the speed and the collaboration and everything. So all these are great lessons that have been learned, not just by us, but I think many of the CII members. Rajiv, you're on mute.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I said, it is good to hear your initial thoughts. One hears that pre-COVID and during COVID, and now as we move out into the new normal, the healthcare sector is being a sector which is being recognized more and more all over the world, where India has taken leadership position. I mean, the most talked about thing, of course, is in our vaccine production and our vaccine innovation and development, both by CII and then Biotech. But are there any other areas where you feel India has greatly advanced and is going to take, in fact, a global leadership or pole position thanks to COVID?
So I completely agree with you that India was always the medicine provider for the world, and now we are seriously the vaccine. Everyone has seen the how India has really come forward, and we're going to be providing almost 50% of the world's vaccines will come out of India. Not just these two, but now we're going to be manufacturing at least 3-4 others. So this is a great strength, and it's not a strength that was built with COVID. Thankfully, all before. In other healthcare matters, I would think that some of the things that we are doing in terms of data that we can put together will actually form new protocols and processes for the world in how we manage remote healthcare. It's become more inclusive. India is a model where you can do, which is a scaled model. So after China, I think that you're going to see a lot of digital innovations happening out of India, just as you've seen in fintech. Today, India is one of the most exciting fintech, the most exciting edutech, and the most exciting digital health platforms in the world, and how it's evolving. And from there, I'm hopeful that Atmanirbhar also will see that a lot more manufacturing comes back to our shores, but that's a different story. I'm sure you're dealing with it. But I think in the digital, India is doing quite well.
And Shobna, it's very interesting. I think it was about 10 or 12 years ago, I was having a conversation with your father, and he was telling us not just about telemedicine, but of telesurgery, telediagnostics, So could you highlight us a little more on what you're doing, Apollo is doing, and what the rest of India is doing, and what are the chances of us getting leadership? When I say us, I mean as a country, getting leadership in this field.
Let me give you an example, a use case. Today we measure saying that India has too little doctors and nurses, because you use an ancient mathematical saying that one doctor for every 1,000 people. But just imagine if you can get them all on mobile or on a device, people come. And doctors are skewed. Why would they want to stay in a village or a small town? Most of them are urban concentrated. And in urban areas, have a very good skew. I think the whole metric of how we measure healthcare is now going to, and India, because of Ayushman Bharat, has the ability to actually put out many test cases. That if you're going to insure 500 million people across India, you can't use the old models. It's very clear. A really exciting one that I can tell you we're currently testing is tele-ICUs. So we're managing ICUs in villages. So, and it's all remote. I would think that predicated on 5G and where it comes, we could series with the robots in distant locations and our doctors sitting here in Hyderabad or Calcutta. So the realm is of possibility is just incredible. But one particular shift I've seen, I'd like to, before I move, is before we spoke about personalized, it was all about the people and how I can give you personalized medicine, what I can do for you. Now, because of the pandemic, I think that health has become way more inclusive. We're saying, how can we change whole communities? How can we change the country's health? And that's
Well, Shobna, perhaps if we have time for one last question, Shobna, if you could, talk about a little bit about the, you began by saying that nobody ever thought about, a thing like pandemic hitting all of us. Do you think there is anything else that could come, be it in the health sphere or any other sphere, which could be a catastrophe for everybody in the world? I mean, have you thought of any such thing, or would you like to leave us with a thought on this as to what we need to be prepared for next?
I think that we've gone through too much, Rajiv. Let's get over this one. So I do see that with the vaccine, there's a hope that we'll get over this, and let us understand that CII during all this has been championing for, let me plug the CII thing, that for corporates, because all of you, we're not going to get back to business until all your workforce is vaccinated and out there. So this is something that we've been pushing. I think this is the only way for us to get this economy back. That's one. The second thing I would really say is that is this sustainability would be the scary thing. Sustainability in terms of our own health. So much has been ignored during this pandemic. We only thought of COVID, Corona. We didn't think about TB in the workforce, how it's proliferated. We never thought about mental health. We never talked about, so many of the malnutrition that has taken place. So, and then the NCDs. Now we're picking up again stage 4 cancers. So that war again has to reach. So there's so much out there. But I do think that there is a world we've become, we've actually, everyone has become, we have this specialty now that before our kids and all our generation, what our grandparents had of fighting a war, all of us today have this new coverage. So I do have great hope for humanity.
Thank you very much, Shobna. I think that's a very strong ending, hope for humanity. I think you left us all with a very, very positive message. So we will carry your hope for humanity. And let me tell you, CII and all of us, and indeed India, is very proud of you, your father, your sisters, and your entire family. Good luck to all of you in the future. Thank you. Thank you so much, Shobha. Big hand. Big hand, although it's a virtual hand, a big hand.
Lovely
Thank
to
you,
see
Shobha.
all of you, and please stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So back to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. From a very interesting and a positive session, we now move on to our next CEO session, Transforming Business Landscape, Disruptions, Innovations, New Ways of Doing Business. We have with us Mr. Rajiv Kaul, past President CII, Chairman Nico Group, in conversation with Mr. Amitav Khosla, Country Director, India, International Air Transport Association, Mr. R. Mukundan, MD and CEO from Tata Chemicals, and Mr. Vijay Devan, Managing Director, APJ Surendra Park Hotels. Over to you, Mr. Kaul.
Well, thank you very much. And once again, welcome to the second plenary session. And this is going to be a bit of focus on the challenges in perhaps the worst affected sectors of industry, and of course as to how CII's very own Mukundan has steered Tata Chemicals, or continued to steer it through this COVID storm and take it to even new heights, again using the technology, using innovation, transforming their business. But I would like to begin by introducing them together, one after the other, and then we will move into maybe a brief 3-4 minute opening statement each, and followed by a vibrant, hopefully very vibrant discussion. So first of all, it's a pleasure and a privilege for me to introduce Mr. Amitav Khosla, who I'm meeting for the first time virtually, and it's a pleasure, Mr. Khosla. He is the country director for IATA, the International Airport Transport Association, right? And it's lovely to have you with us in an area which has been really impacted, I think, immediately that COVID struck, and it's still kind of now gradually limping back. But we also have my dear friend, Mr. Mukundan, and I've had the pleasure of knowing him from CII and in IBA and many other fora. So it's great to have you. He has been gradually and steadily building the Tata Chemicals, what I should say is now a group. He's made it an Indian global company during his leadership days, because they are now in Europe, in North America, and indeed in Africa. So we look forward to hear from you in a short while as to your transformation that you've sort of initiated in Tata Chemical Group as we move to you. And last but not the least, another very dear friend, and perhaps still a fellow Kolkatan before he moves to New Delhi, and then perhaps God knows which part of the world, as he steers the APJ Surendra Park Hotel Group to different parts. But today he's built over the last few years the chain into 12 hotels, and I know many more are under construction. He's given solid backup support, as we heard a while ago, to our outgoing chairman, Abhijit, and of course CII looks forward to strong leadership under him from tonight onwards, or perhaps tomorrow morning onwards. So let us first begin by perhaps the most impacted sector, aviation. So Amitav, strictly speaking, when I was reading about IATA, you really are not responsible for the profitability of airlines. because you're more responsible for safety, operations, providing membership service. But all your members have been clearly impacted hugely, be they Indian members or global members. So we'd like to hear from you as to how you've sort of managed, your members have managed, what their future plans are, and when do you think we'll be back into a net growth phase for the industry? Over to you, Amitabh.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kaul. I think it's great to see you, as you said, virtually. Brings back some very pleasant and happy memories of the years that I spent in Calcutta. So, as you mentioned, aviation has been one of the most adversely affected sectors because of COVID-19 and the resulting pandemic. And perhaps, I can give you some context in terms of where we were and where we are today. So IATA is the International Air Transport Association, which is, we have these 300 member airlines, which carry between them 84% of the global air traffic, and some strong membership base in India as well. I would like to kind of, take you back to around this time last year. So it's exactly 1 year to the month back in March, when all the aviation activity in India had come to a standstill. The government had first shut down international flights, and then just a few days later, on the 25th of March last year, when even domestic operations were shut down. So from those initial months, I'm sure you recall the images from around the world, which were of these tightly parked aircraft on airport tarmacs, ghost flights, with just a few passengers on board, or even the cabin crew, who were not in standard airline uniforms, but dressed in full PPE suits. So this is an industry which is synonymous with travel and movement, works 24/7 around the clock. And shutdown was the complete opposite of what the industry represents. So we had a situation where traffic had fallen to zero for 2 long months. And that was not something that had been foreseen by any of the airlines in any of their risk modeling exercises that they had undertaken for extreme business events, even including pandemics. So there aren't any great new business strategies at play which are there at present. The focus is really for the airlines back to basics, which are around one, preserving their financial strength. Secondly, it's about rebuilding and restarting their operations and their network, and also kind of through what they do to also bring back passenger confidence. So these were some of the basics that they are onto. But and you've mentioned this I think right up front, that one of the major impacts of COVID-19 for the airlines has been financial. And we look at IATA Economics' own data that we have kind of produced over the past 1 year. And we see that financially, 2020 was the worst year in recorded aviation history, with $118 billion worth of losses for the global industry. And the projection is for these losses to continue into 2021 as well. And even 21, the losses that we expect would be far higher than even what was recorded in the previous such crisis, which was the global financial crisis of 2008. So the airlines have taken a hit, and one of the transformations that they are undertaking is, in fact, at their own airline balance sheet level, because the airlines have been burning cash through the past year, trying to manage liquidity, and focus now is really back on rebuilding their balance sheets, which had, it stood completely eroded for many an airline around the world. it's for the first time that even many of the iconic airlines around the world, they've had to be supported by governments, whether it was through, direct cash or providing debt or even, wage support for the airline workforce. So that's really the financial impact. But now I think the focus, together with regaining financial strength, is also back on restarting of their operations. So restart in the midst of ever-changing rules, whether it's around the pre-departure testing, the quarantines upon arrival, and now with the vaccination rollout. So I mean that's where we are at right now. The impact is different both for domestic, which has seen a very steady and a robust recovery, and international, which continues to be far greater impacted because of all the travel and visa restrictions that are in place between different countries. So I'll pass that back to you, Mr. Kaul.
Yeah, thank you, Amitabh. Thank you. I now perhaps move to someone who may have more cheer, because the industry that he's in, I think, has been impacted, but in different ways, and perhaps they could come out a lot faster and stronger. So over to you, Mukunda. You're on mute. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Rajiv, and absolutely delighted to be with the Eastern region in their annual meeting. And I just want to say that hope, as was mentioned by Shobna already, we all hope that we all come out of this safe and we all come out of this sound. One of the key points is that we have been in many ways compared to. Am I audible?
You can speak a little louder. I mean, you're very audible, but a little louder would be better.
Okay, so I was just saying that we've been fairly lucky being in a sector which was servicing the agriculture, the food, and some parts of the industrial which were impacted, but not as deeply as travel or tourism. So I really cannot say that we were so badly impacted. Our factories were running all the way through. There were dislocations because of the labor movement. The labor was wanting to go back to hometown because of the pressures they were facing. So these issues were there, but I think we quickly came back to normal because of the sectors we were servicing, and we are now rebuilding. Obviously, when your customers are feeling the pinch, you cannot have a great time in terms of financials and balance sheet that we've had to rebuild. All through this time, we learned three things. And I just want to say, one is that it pays to be being in a purpose-driven organization where frontline workers can take their own decisions. If we had not, we quickly realized that this whole structure which we had, I'm getting a feedback from somewhere. Maybe I can request others to mute. The frontline staff, whether it was in Ranchi or whether it was in Kolhapur, they were taking decisions on the basis of what their district was unfolding. And they were not looking back to some boss, approving those decisions. And they were all done in the interest of the teams, in the interest of the customer. And I think that really helped. Having an organization which was capable, which was delegated down into the front line. And also, it was a sobering lesson to many of us who thought that the best form of control is self-control by the frontline staff. So building an organization which is very much distributed leadership, I think, is the new way forward as we come out of this pandemic. The second element we learned very quickly was that you need to be part of an ecosystem which survives. You cannot survive on your own. Your vendors need to be survived. In the initial days, for example, some of the packaging units shut down. So we had to spend time with our packaging units to say, how do they restart? Because without packaging, you can't even transport the material which you are wanting to ship. Logistics was a big issue. So I think this also brought to bear the whole issue of collaborative working. So, and lastly, I think what we have learned is using technology to be more agile. So 3 lessons. Have a distributed frontline leadership, which is enabled, which is purpose-driven. Secondly, be collaborative. And thirdly, have a more agile process and system which can change fast. in terms of the way we are looking forward into the future, I think there are certain forces which are going to help us as we come out of the pandemic. One is that there's a complete movement of, redesign of the supply chain to more resilience, which means that India will be the focus as supply chain moves to India through de-signification and as single source becomes multiple source. And I think that's a great opportunity. And I think Indian companies should pitch for that opportunity as becoming part of the global supply chain. The second element has already been highlighted by many speakers. Sustainability will be the key issue going forward. We need to build organizations which are environmentally sound and are having principles of going to net zero in carbon by 2050. But those sort of pressures will be on organization, but we must leapfrog that process. Thirdly, technology, both digital and new materials, I think will be the order of the day. And all this has to be supported by talent, which we need to build. I think this is also brought to bear that there is a big divide in our country between talent which is digitally enabled, talent which is not digitally enabled. Building that would be skill development, and building that would be the key. So going forward, reshaping of supply chains, sustainability, focus on technology through digital and R&D, supported by building our skills and talent would be the key in my view. But clearly, this has been the worst negative period which many of us have seen. Some of us have been more fortunate than other sectors. But I think this has also taught us a very important lesson. We all focus on P&L statements. I think this has taught us a very important lesson, focus on balance sheet as well, because balance sheet strength is what helps you in the long run. Thank you, Rajiv.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'm glad you brought out the financial aspect, because those who have the liquidity can survive and indeed have survived. And those who have a high degree of leverage or borrowings have really suffered the most. I now move over to Vijay again, who's as head of Park Hotels, has been in a highly disrupted and stressed sector as a result of COVID. And just to give you a little backdrop, the entire tourism industry in India was pre-COVID around 280 billion US dollars, which is around 9% or a shade over 9% of our total India's GDP, right? In terms of jobs, it had a direct and indirect job of 42 million people employed in the industry. So it will be good to hear from Vijay, not just about Park Hotels, but as to how the whole industry also, in fact, coped with this. But over to you for your introductory remarks, Vijay. You can also respond along with Amitabh on these other aspects as we go along. Vijay, floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Rajiv. And I can see also Admiral Verma on the screen. So when this crisis was really an unbelievable crisis, which hit the hospitality and industry. We, in terms of occupancy, you can say fell from close to 95, 96% at the group level. It fell down to virtually zero. So when we looked at it, when I looked at it, I looked at one statement of Winston Churchill at the time of the World War II. I'm sure you're all aware of it. He made this profound statement that never let a good crisis go waste. So enormous crisis, how to convert, the challenge was how to convert this crisis into an opportunity. And the only way I felt that we could convert this into an opportunity is to firstly believe in your teams and your people, because at the end of the day, this is people's business. And again, at the end of the day, the people are actually going to make a huge difference. So we took a couple of steps. One is that we completely reversed the sort of, you can say, the forces way of working, completely reverse it. We said that first, protect yourself. Second, you protect your family. and third comes the organization, which in a normal situation is just the reverse. Second is that, of course, to improve both capital as well as operational efficiencies, and then to look at resourcefulness rather than resources, because these were, this time we felt is going to be very, very difficult. So one has to look at resourcefulness rather than resources, and try and do a few things during this time and do them absolutely right. To give you an example, there was no business, but there was business on the side of the e-commerce side of the business. So there was an opportunity, so hotels could easily get into the e-commerce side of the business, and the teams work towards it. So do a few things during the period of crisis, but do them absolutely right. And then to use this as an opportunity to sort of reset and reimagine the whole business, and then to give it a restart. So we were able to put with these 5-6 thoughts in mind, and a very strong belief in the teams, we were able to sort of put things back. And but nothing really worked in the first month. The occupancy actually came back to only 9%. But as we continue to implement the plan, continue to believe in the people, and continue to focus on these 5-6 key aspects which I mentioned about, things started coming back. And also, as it was very important to look at technology, and it was also very important to stay connected with the customers. Hotels they are a little ahead of in terms of technology, but we use the digital method of connecting with the guests a little bit more seriously. So if we have nightclubs, we created situations where we can take the nightclub back into your house. We could have DJs playing for you at a particular hour, a particular kind of music. We could connect with the customers in terms of food, in terms of cooking of food, various kinds of lessons in food. And then, of course, use this also as an opportunity to do some social service, because at that particular time, a lot of migrant workers were returning, and it was very, very important to actually do the kind of some sort of service to the community. So a lot of work was done. Some work was done by us in collaboration with CII itself, particularly in Calcutta. We could, from our Flurries outlets, we kept on producing, and we could supply bread, a large quantity of bread to the migrant workers, as well as to the other sectors or the other weaker sectors of the people. And then, of course, even people, the customers also needed supplies. So we could use our vans to actually supply food through the vans to all these multi-story complexes, not just only in Calcutta, but also in other cities. So could food actually reach the people during this period of crisis, particularly in the first 2-3 weeks, the situation was very, very difficult. So the main focus was to actually use this crisis as an opportunity, and so much so that we are relatively fairly back in business in terms of occupancy. By end of December, we were 88% in occupancy. End of November, end of February, we were at 92% occupancy. So in terms of occupancy, we were able to come back. And I would say that the comeback is largely related to people, because if you believe in the people, they will get it all right for you. Back to you.
Thank you, Vijay. Good to hear that you're back to 92% in February. But was it 2 years ago also at 92% in February? Or were you
pre-COVID, I wouldn't say about the year 1920, because 1920 again the year got
yeah, that's why I said 2 years ago.
Last month of 1920 got severely impacted, but nevertheless 1920 we closed at about 85% occupancy, and 2 years ago we closed at 89%. In fact, we have gone higher on occupancy, and that has given us the courage to actually look at opportunities to actually at this time go to the capital markets and see if we can further improve our capital efficiency.
Lovely. So then we look forward to a very good celebration tonight. I mean, you're ahead of February 2 years ago, so that's very good news.
No,
so I'm sorry, Mukundar, you're far away, so you will not be able to do this, but he owes you one, all right? He owes you one.
Definitely. But the occupancy is back, but there is there's a huge pressure as far as rates are concerned in the industry, and the way business is coming back in hospitality, it's coming back first to the resorts. But in our case, it has been different because we use entertainment to actually create value. So that also sort of completely distinguishes us from the rest. So we are able to create a lot more demand, and that demand is created largely because of the entertainment offerings we have. We have various nightclubs. But the aviation sector, which was talked about, is also coming back. Means it's obviously there is again a slight stress again because of the second wave, which is coming out of Maharashtra. But otherwise, pre-COVID, we used to have 2,500 flights in the air. 2,200 flights were back in the air by end of February, as reported by the Ministry of Civil Aviation. Compared to 350,000 passengers traveling every day, roughly 295 passengers were traveling by end of February every day. So domestic tourism in India, as was mentioned, is coming back in a very big way. There is a lot of revenge tourism taking place, as we have seen in China as well. Domestic tourism has brought China's tourism virtually back, and we can see this trend in India also, and I firmly believe that if we can little bit control it at this time, domestic tourism is going to be the big mega trend of 2021 as far as hospitality and tourism is concerned.
Thank you. If I may just move to Amitabh again. If you could unmute yourself also, Amitabh. Thank you. Amitabh, picking up on the point that Vijay was mentioning about the problems in the aviation industry, which is a vital part of the tourism industry, I would like to highlight the job aspects, because I do know there have been a lot of job losses, and the job losses are perhaps 2 or 3 different types. One is where you part with a guy forever, and when you part with a person forever, it could be for 2 reasons. One is the company is folded up. So if the company is folded up, then quite clearly everybody goes, right? Then the others are who have financial strength, but have to reduce their expenses. They can go for again permanent layoffs, or they can go for temporary layoffs. And this would be a question that is very important from India, because across we've lost anywhere between 20 million jobs, or that a very large number of jobs. Not, of course, all in aviation or hotels, but it will be good to get an idea in terms of job losses that you have experienced or your industry's experienced, Amitabh, in India. It'll be good to get an idea if you have a fix on that. And similarly, that same question I would like to ask for Vijay, for not just the Park Hotel, but for what their estimates for the industry are. And then the same question also I would like to ask finally to Mr. Mukundar, because I don't know, that's a different sector. So maybe they're not impacted, or they've been able to do the opposite. I don't know. But let's begin with you, Amitabh.
Sure, Mr. Kaul. One of the things that I wanted to highlight was that even though I painted a very grim picture about, where we were with aviation right at the start, one of the forecasts that IATA has had prior to COVID was about what would be the trajectory of, the top 10 aviation markets in the world. So India is expected to become the third largest aviation market in the world by our pre-COVID estimates were by 2025. And on the back of the recovery, which we have seen, and Mr. Devan also spoke about the recovery that we have seen in the course of this past 1 year, and the bigger impact that many of the other global key aviation markets have felt, because theirs was different, not so entrenched with domestic travel, but also I think guided by international travel. So we have already seen India becoming, in our last data, we have seen India becoming the third largest aviation market in the world. So
already,
it has, yes. But that's on account of a few changes, where the others have suffered the bigger decline, and we have seen a greater recovery, quicker recovery. So, but essentially it points to the fact that, the inherent strength of the Indian aviation industry exists. And, we are seeing that as well. On the question of jobs that you mentioned, apart from the aircraft, I think the only other assets that airlines have are its employees and the workforce. So, and this is also a sector which, it relies heavily on, it's regulated really, on trained manpower, licensed manpower, on, the renewal of licenses and recency of training. All of that is really what keeps, us safe, secure, and everything else that aviation needs to perform day in, day out. So what we saw in the case of the airline industry right at the start of the pandemic was that every airline needed to take certain actions with 2 long months of zero traffic and zero revenues. So there were certain things to be done with regards to how to handle big areas of cost. So I think airlines responded differently. Some were able to continue supporting the workforce. There were others who let go. So I think that was also done in, in different forms and shapes. So for example, wage reduction right at the start, because we were, thinking that lockdown would be for 3 odd weeks. And then when it continued for longer, then I think more needed to be done. So we've seen layoffs right at the end of that. We've had severe job losses, not just within the airline industry, but also on all of the downstream allied, the aviation ecosystem sectors, including travel and tourism, I think has seen severe job losses. And that's really been one of the most distressing part of what's been the impact of COVID, which is on livelihoods. But what we are seeing of late, and which again I think points to recovery, is that again you mentioned trained manpower, hard to let go. But if airlines have benched them or let them go, then we are also seeing them now rehiring. So based on this increase in connectivity that we are seeing. In fact, the airline network itself, we are seeing that domestic, since international is largely closed, domestic has become an area of great priority for the airlines. And in fact, I was seeing that even in the eastern region, airports like Patna, Bagdogra, Calcutta, Bhubaneswar, Raipur, flights and capacity are far better now than they were pre-COVID, especially on certain specific routes. So we are seeing, I think, similarly, that increase in traffic, increase in capacity starts to also result in rehiring and re-employment of the workforce as well.
Okay, thank you Vijay, if we could come to you on this aspect of jobs.
No, so firstly, before I sort of go to jobs, let me add my bit on the aviation side. So as I was saying, it's sort of coming back in a very significant manner. And the only issue which we of course could not discuss in the previous meeting with Dr. Krishnamurthy is, of course, there is still the rates are still regulated. Means the government talks a lot about the ease of doing business, but it continues to, for whatever reason, regulate the airline rates, and that issue will certainly have to be addressed because that'll get the airlines back into profitability much faster. The second thing about India's domestic tourism is that don't forget that 26 million Indians used to travel abroad on an annualized basis, which obviously includes you and all of us. And the international tourism is virtually blocked, and these 26 million Indians are all traveling within India. So that is also sort of reflecting in the increase of domestic tourism taking place in India. You will be surprised that in, say, Goa, rates are in not less than 10,000 in any small hotel. Means otherwise they could be in a good luxury hotel, could be as high as 25,000. So domestic tourism, and coupled with this 26 million Indians who used to travel abroad every year, that they're not finding any revenue. It is really helping the domestic aviation industry, and because they are moving up the ladder, it obviously helps the hospitality industry. Yes, because of the loss of revenue, there were a lot of difficult steps which the hospitality industry had to take. I think hospitality would have lost at least 1/3 of the jobs. We also had to downsize. We used to operate at 1.33 employees per room pre-COVID, or to be simpler, 1.35 employees per room. That at the end of December, we had actually brought it down to 0.77 to a room. So that is the indication of sort of the job losses which have sort of taken place, because the pandemic has really impacted the jobs. So virtually 1/3 of the jobs across the industry, they have been lost. But recovery is underway. We are also again rehiring, and the first objective is to rehire the people who were laid off. And currently we are at 0.9, and going forward in the next financial year, we plan to take it to 1.2 employees per room. So on that side also, we are ensuring that we are sort of back in business. It's not just all about revenues, it's also all about people. So we have to get them back as soon as possible.
Thank you, Vijay. And now, last but certainly not least, Mukundar, if you could give us an idea on jobs and also going forward in terms of your growth plans, and both in India and globally. If you could say that, would you be, how confident are you now post-COVID? Are you more confident post-COVID than you were pre-COVID, or equally confident?
So I think I would say probably we are now in a much better position, Rajiv. So let me first start by saying the countries reacted differently. For example, Singapore, UK, and USA, I think the governments were actually giving us money for keeping the employees on rolls. So there was a payroll support which came in from them. Singapore had a very clear plan, which was and the checks were, and the money was coming into a bank account directly by the government. They had the list of people. In UK and USA, the whole support was more to say that if you don't lay off employees, but keep them on furlough, but then we will support you, and the support did come. Kenya and India, I think there was no support by government, but actually we had no layoffs. The issue we faced was very different. We had this COVID protocols to be followed in our operations, which meant that we couldn't get our full workforce into the factory. And to keep the factory running, we had huge shortage of people in the sense, how do we sort of rotate them? So we had to really work our way through in the initial period. But I think now we've gotten used to this whole scheme of working with less people and faster rotation, multi-skilling people. I think this is going to carry on going forward. We are now back to normal. And last quarter was the first quarter where we hit the numbers which we had in terms of revenues, very similar to the quarter before in terms of volumes. The revenue numbers were almost flat, but I think in terms of volume, we did hit because the prices had dropped. So leave the unit price effect aside. I think if you talk about quantities, we had hit the quantities. And we are going to see a slight uptick in quantity next quarter. And going forward, certainly next year is very, very positive in the sense that we're talking at least close to double-digit growth across the board. So it is a positive momentum. In terms of people, we took a call very early on that we are not going to, we had a wage freeze. And at the senior level, we took a minor cut, but then we said that we will not let go of anyone, and we've not let go of anybody. So that has been a principle which we had adopted. It has played out very well for us because as we reopen, we need more people. And we are basically using our current team, which is fully trained to move forward. One sector which did very well during this period was agriculture sector. I think there we had to, in fact, do with less number of people. We probably will be hiring more now as we go into the next season, which also seems to be good. So all in all, I would say that there is a pretty positive momentum, both on export front, on the domestic market front, and hopefully the second wave we are all fearing now. Maharashtra is going through one. We are just hearing that Delhi is also seeing some surge in numbers. This doesn't come back, and really, I would say we in CII have to sort of spread the word that vaccine or no vaccine, the COVID behavior is very important. I think without wearing masking, social distancing, we are not going to be able to overcome this pandemic. And we probably need to be doing that right across wherever we are, especially in closed spaces, right through this year. So business is back, but if you don't behave well, I think there'll be restrictions by government. So if we want to avoid restriction, that is clearly in our hands in the way we behave. Better, more word we spread around people, I think better we would be in the long run. And really the vaccine, by the time we vaccinate most of the people by the end of this year or middle of this year, the most vulnerable, I think that will also give it a very, very positive boost for the economy going forward. And the sectors which have been impacted, whether it be entertainment, tourism, travel, would also start picking up massively as we move forward, in my view.
Thank you very much, Kandan, and thank you very much, Vijay and Amitabh. I think we've had a delightful interaction, good learning for me, and I too hope, and in fact, I'm sure for all the other participants. So I think by and large, we are ending on a positive note, be it what Amitabh said, be it what Vijay said, or be what your final sentence was also, Mukundan. So a big hand to all the panelists, and back to CII for the next session, which we are looking forward to, because that's the future of India, the youth. So over to the youth of India.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We now move on to the third and final plenary of today's conference, Transformed Landscape of Service Business, New Thoughts from the Next Chain. We have with us Ms. Smita Agarwal, Director and Chief Financial Officer, PTC Industries and National Chair of CII Young Indians, in conversation with Mr. Shashwat Goenka, Chairman, CII National Committee on Retail and Sector, and Head Retail and FMCG from RP Sanjeev Goenka Group, Ms. Rochita De, Director, Shrilvez Limited, Ms. Shumi Baniknag, Managing Director, Ajanta Shoes India Private Limited. Over to you, Ms. Agarwal.
And thank you, sir. Mr. Kaul, it has been a wonderful session, and I think a lot of learnings here for all of us. It's been a very, very interesting morning, and I'm so happy that at this final session of this day at the Western Region Annual Regional Meet, we actually are going to talk about what the next generation feels and what is the way forward for all of us, for the industry, and what we have to look forward to. And I think there is a lot of hope, a lot of optimism that we see, and all the discussions that we've had in the morning also signal towards that. And we have here with us three wonderful panelists who are actually beacons in their own fields and who are going to talk about all the innovations and all the transformations that they've seen in their businesses and the mindsets that they have developed, of course, over the pandemic, and what they also look forward to for the times that are coming. So I'm very happy to welcome Mr. Shashwat Goenka, who's also the chairman of the CII National Committee on Retail and Sector Head. And he's also the head for the retail and the FMCG sector in the RP Sanjeev Goenka Group. We also have Ms. Ruchita De, who's the director for Sri Leathers Limited, again, a company with a long and esteemed history in the leather industry. And we have Ms. Somi Banik Nag, who's the managing director of Ajanta Shoes Private Limited, again, a 64-year-old footwear giant. And as this new generation has taken over these stalwart-headed businesses, it's a great opportunity for all of us to understand how they think and how they think that they're going to take these businesses forward. So I'd like to start possibly with some opening statements. I know, Shashwat, that you have a hard stop, so we'd like to start with you and get some of your thoughts about what you think these times have been in the face of the pandemic. And I understand a lot of business models had to transform themselves overnight. So maybe if you could just get some of your thoughts around that.
Sure. Thank you so much, Smita. And it's an absolute pleasure to be here today. So, when I look at the last 12 months, I think it's been nothing short of a roller coaster ride, right? So I think as the world grappled with the rise of the pandemic, India was relatively lucky in that sense that it came into India possibly a couple of months later than it had come into the Western world, right? But having said that, it was still an unprecedented event that kind of happened across the world. And I think when I look back, it's taught us all an important lesson. In fact, I would say two important lessons. One, that businesses need to continually evolve. And secondly, and more importantly, I think businesses need to be more resilient. So when we look at the pandemic, I think overnight businesses had to come up with new strategies to continue operations. Businesses had to come up with new strategies to stay afloat. They also had to play their part in terms of saving the nation or the countries that they belong to, right? The pandemic rapidly made business as usual a phrase from the distant past. There was nothing usual about this uncertain time, I think. And there was no book or manual or any past experience that you could draw on to figure out what the next step should be to run your business. And I think this was more of a challenge, especially for service businesses, which heavily rely a lot on in-person interaction, right? So for example, one of the smallest changes when we look back now, but at that time seemed an insurmountable and unfathomable task, was this whole concept of work from home. Right? It was something that was so new, so different, especially looking at, say, my retail business, right? So spread across the country, we in fact have leaders whose families live across the country as well. And in the time of a pandemic, with the lockdown announced, etc., they wanted to be back with their family, but you had to also figure how you could get to a scenario of work from home. You had to figure how could you keep your stores up and running, because there were also challenges in terms of course, initially with the lockdown, there was no public transport. So how do you get store staff to come into the store? How do you get them to stack the store? How do you get goods moving from your warehouse to the store as well? Another issue that we kind of faced, I remember initially, was because this was an unprecedented thing that happened, the pandemic, there was a lot of, panic in a way initially with the customers, which settled down over a couple of weeks. But initially, where everyone was queuing and there was a huge beeline of customers at stores to stock up and hoard on daily essentials. They wanted their staples. They wanted dal, rice, atta, basics to be there in their homes, right? And so you were running out of stock on those items. You were also having to do social distancing while maintaining a huge beeline of customers who were all struggling and making sure that they got that last pack of dal or rice that was available on the shelf, and they did not go home empty-handed, right? So that was a very interesting challenge that was there. Some of the other measures that we put in place at that time, I remember, and I think that these were all things that we did not anticipate. They were more things that you kind of did a little bit as the situation was evolving, was trying to figure out how do you, keep your customers when they come to your store safe? How do you ensure that stores are being completely sanitized all the way through at periodic intervals without interrupting the flow of customers? Because even customers had to be spaced out. So we actually had started a slot system in a way initially where you could actually book a slot and then come into the store at that time. So we were able to control the number of people that were in the store. The other interesting thing in fact, that was, I think, one of the biggest challenges we faced initially was, we went from being less than 1% online, even though Spencer's is an omni-channel retailer, to being over 90% online, right? Overnight. So you had irate customers who were obviously not getting delivery slots over the next 3 to 5 days to get their stock because the system was not built to cater to that level of demand. You had sites crashing, and so you had to kind of work with servers and figure out what overnight you could how could you amp that up, and that was one of the other things that we had to do. Then, it was, and everyone at that point wanted their product to reach them first. No one was willing to wait for a slot 4 days later, 6 days later, 8 days later. You don't have a fleet of delivery people, right? That was up and running at that point in time. And then to be very, very fair, the delivery staff themselves, because of the pandemic, were very unsure, is this something that they want to be out and about doing their work in, right? Because even they were scared of Corona, right? No one really knew what it was, what it did, and rightly so. But I think what really, really helped us a lot was, I think, the immense government support we received, both at the central level and at every state that we have operations in, right? From solving each of these issues of how do we get public transport or how do we get transport to get workers to come into stores that are deemed as essential services so operations can continue. How can you get supply chains back up and running for manufacturers and partners of ours who are producing these essential services? Because at one point factories were also closed. And I think I have nothing but genuine praise from the bottom of my heart for the way the government has handled this entire situation. They were so thoughtful. They had that foresight in terms of planning all of these things out and working in a systematic manner with all of us retailers, both offline, online, omni-channel, to kind of figure out how this could be done. I think a lot of things that needed to be done, a lot of things that have happened. And I think the couple of things that I have learned from this last 1 year, like I mentioned earlier as well, I think resilience is extremely, extremely important. Second is, in business school, I always studied that you should have a blueprint for business and you kind of live up to that, follow that, and you will get through with your results. But what that blueprint doesn't teach you is how do you deal with something that is not planned for, right? A pandemic, right? And I think, so therefore, continuous evolution, resilience, and I think a huge degree of optimism is what one needs to have to kind of get through times like these, right? And I think one more thing that I personally learned also is you need to be a lot more sensitive because you are working with people. You are not working with machines. And they also have feelings, they also have concerns, they also have, stresses and worries about things, about themselves, about their families, about their futures. So I think it really taught me a very 360 perspective on how we should be looking at business. And it's not just P&L. P&L is a very strong part of it. Balance sheet is a very important part of it, but there's this whole other ecosystem that needs to be looked at. So I just say that much, Smita, and hand it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Shashwat. And I think you very rightly highlighted resilience and evolving strategies as a very important factor in these times. Again, there is no blueprint. But it's also makes me think when you were talking that, you talked about the consumers panicking and sort of just immediately, it's still, I think, very creditable. And you did give credit to the government and of course credit to organizations like yours, where we did not in any case still experience a real shortage of anything. We know there are stories in the United States and all where there was out of toilet paper within a matter of weeks. And we still had a country like India with the sort of population that we have, which really still managed to get through. So that's amazing. Would you have a time for another question, or if you really have a hard stop, then
no, absolutely. We can take a couple more minutes if that's okay.
So I just wanted to get one sense from you is about this is what has happened at the time of the pandemic and how, of course, businesses coped with it and they transformed almost overnight. But what do you see going forward? Do you think some of the changes that have come are here to stay? And is there anything further that you're looking at in terms of innovation and that the next gen should be looking at, when they are working in these similar spheres?
Absolutely. So I think, what are the things that are here to stay? There'll probably be plenty. I think one of the things that is here to stay, definitely, at least as far as I look at my retail business that's concerned, on the services side, is there has been a big consumer shift to shopping or purchasing things out of store. So whether it's done over the phone, whether it's done through an app, whether it's done over the web, right? And that is a change that we are seeing is a sticky change. Overall, we were less than 1% for the last 6 years. We've been at that number. The offline business is growing so well, and the online was also growing significantly, but it was always still in a percentage terms less than 1%. Like I said, with the pandemic, overnight plus 95% online, stabilized at 40-45% for a large part, and now it's about 5%, and it's been that for the last 2 quarters, right? And I think that is there to stay because it's a whole different set of customers who have found this avenue, and it's an easy avenue in that sense to shop, right? So I think that is here to stay. But I also do believe that a lot of things will go back, and when I look at grocery, touch and feel becomes very important when you're buying those products. So I don't see that significant shift that will happen, but there is a subset of customers who have migrated, and that migration is here to stay.
Yes, absolutely. I think touch and feel is something that still, I think a lot of people still go by that. But what's interesting is that a lot of things that we, with our business strategies and all the, effort that we put into it to try and take businesses online to change consumer behavior sort of happened automatically with the pandemic. And now the acceptability to all of this has risen so much. So when we talk about touch and feel, I'd just like to also talk to Rochita, who's also in a business where I think touch and feel plays a very important role, especially for a lot of women. In fact, with leather products, I don't know how you could actually transform the business to this manner, Rochita, where people started, migrating to the online sphere and being able to make it work.
No, I do. And actually, we have abused the presence of website for so long. We've had a website for a really long time, but we've never used it because in Indian retail, you're stuck in that festival cycle. Once you're done with Durga Puja, you're preparing for Diwali, Kali Pujo, going into Christmas, New Year's, then Shankranti, then you have Lagan season, so on and so forth. So we've never really had that time to take away from your offline stores to focus on our website, which I don't know if I shouldn't use the word fortunately, but in 2020, we did have that opportunity. And even though we had, like last year, our offline stores, each unit I'm saying, took a hit of at least 70 to 80% in sales, but our website grew in times. And it's very difficult for my brand to establish a strong presence digitally because in terms of pricing, we do the right price throughout the year. We don't use discounts, which is very prevalent in the online. When you go, the concept of value is, as a consumer, I'm also guilty of doing this. I perceive value in terms of pricing. So when I see, okay, so this is a 2,000 rupee shoe that I'm getting at 50% off, so I'm getting a 2,000 rupee value at 1,000 rupees. But we don't do the discounts. We already, if I can charge you 1,000 rupees, I will never charge you 2,000 rupees for it. So for us to deliver, to convey that message digitally with the lack of tangibility, very along the lines of what you were just discussing with Shashwat, it becomes very difficult for me to convince consumers online. Having said that, one of the great opportunities is, if you compare me to any other brand, I know Somi is here from Ajanta, and if you compare me with any other footwear brand, we barely have 41 stores. All the other stores have hundreds and thousands of stores across the country. So for us to have access to pan India, like when I'm serving through our website, I'm delivering pan India. And when I'm serving through 41 locations, I'm barely serving the local community. So that for me was an opportunity. And that I think for me is here to stay. Another thing that I think we learned the hard way last year was the importance of social media. I'm not sure if you're aware, but we had a terrible experience last year. Something went viral. And that also is another thing that we're taking a lot seriously now going on. We've always had a Facebook page and Instagram page, but we never took digital activations very seriously. And one of the things that I really like, actually two things that I really enjoy about social media. One thing is the result is measurable. Like when I put a newspaper ad, I don't know if a customer has looked at the ad and come to the stores, or looked at the ad, may not have come to the stores, but has appreciated the artwork. But on social media, I know if the customer has clicked on that post, gone to my website, made a purchase. I know what is my conversion percentage. I also know that, okay, may not have converted, but they have liked the post or liked the page. So that feedback is very important for me to make future decisions. Another thing on digital medium that has been very helpful is the fact that it's a two-way communication. You see, I don't know if other people agree with me, but I'm in an office. I don't partake in sales associate customer interactions. So I don't know what a consumer is saying, which is very important for me to understand where my brand stands in terms of a consumer's perception. So, I mean, we do have a helpline in the office and I do sometimes answer calls there, but over there, people just ask technical questions. Is your store open, or what are your hours of operation? Nobody asks me that, nobody tells me that, we've been purchasing you for, we've been related to your brand for 25 years and we've had a great experience. We can't complain, keep up the good work or whatever. Like on social media, everything like good, bad, ugly, you get to know a wholesome perspective of what your consumers are thinking of you. And that for me is very important because I work with feedback. So that is my take on going forward digitally and with the rise of e-commerce now. If you want, I can talk about another thing that we do in e-commerce that is different, that we do differently. But I don't know if you want to bounce back to Shashwat because I understand.
Absolutely, yes. Sure, Ruchita.
Okay. So for e-commerce, I know it's very popular to other brands to partner with stronger e-commerce platforms like Amazon, the likes of Flipkart, Myntra. We cannot afford it. So we have the same principle offline as we do online. So offline also we only sell through our own stores, and online we only sell through our own website. Not because we are trying to be exclusive, just because when you're partnering with another brand, your margins take a hit. And for us, because one of our value propositions is offering right price, we cannot afford that 4% or 8% in our margin. So what happens is we miss out on possibly the advantage you have for that digital platform that can offer in terms of logistics, in terms of promotion. But that is something that we do differently that probably is unheard of. So few things that we do that is not by the book, in retail at least, we don't give discounts. We only sell through our own platform. We don't sell our products anywhere. You won't see us in any multi-brand stores or malls. Mainly because, see, every cost that is incurred, we don't even have any loans. 100% of our finances are funded by our own internal revenue, which is also another unheard of thing. We are happy, and we get a lot of complaints you're not opening, you're not expanding. And for us, expansion is that is secondary. We're happy with sustainable growth. We're not looking at growing at at an exponential rate. What is important is that we don't incur unnecessary costs, because at the end of the day, it will be transferred over to our consumer. And that, as long as we are not straying from our original value propositions, for us, that takes precedence over everything else.
Absolutely. I think I see this, Rochita. I think you're very right. The value proposition, if it is adequately made clear to the consumer and they understand your philosophy behind it, and the fact that you're actually, I think, trying to be as true and as transparent as possible to pass on the maximum benefits to them. I think that's absolutely wonderful. Somi, I'd like you to maybe talk a little bit more about what you see, because I think compared to Rochita, your business, and you've been very aggressively marketing it and spreading and growing, and that's a completely different way to approach this. And I know the kind of brand that you have, the level of penetration is absolutely wonderful. So how did the business have to react immediately post the pandemic? Shashwat was talking about essential goods, but in your case, did you see a bump? Did you see initially a downtrend, and then how did you actually?
See, my market, my people, my customers are entirely different. Okay, so what happened during pandemic itself was, when it really hit the pandemic, of course there was a bump. There was the stores were closed. There was no sales coming in and all of that. So the e-commerce, it did go up. And then what happened was that when the factory started opening, we had a increase in, the flip-flops, the Hawaiis, and the things they wear at home, those kind of chappals that really went up. And then we saw when the stores started opening up, there was of course a little less sales than obviously that was happening last year. But we did pick up. We did pick up in 2021. And we did, of course, there was again an increase in e-commerce and the homewares. A lot of homewares were selling a lot. So we focused a lot on the factory wares, factory production, and the things we got from the factory. And what else? We saw accessories part were okay. It was selling, but yeah, the leather shoes, the sports, everything was okay. But the homewares, it did go up a lot.
So did you actually need any immediate reactions or immediate innovations or any maybe infusion of technology or anything to sort of bring things back on course? And again, because we are talking in this context, how does the next gen react to it vis-a-vis what is the differences that you would have seen if there would have been a, maybe somebody from an older generation sitting at the reins at that point of time?
See, me being from the new generation, what I did immediately was I focused a lot on the e-commerce sales. And as Rochita also said that, partnering with the big brands that I started, like the Amazon, Flipkart, Myntra, a lot of these, B2B channels or B2C channels, I sort of explored in all of it. And my sales, it did go up a lot on e-commerce, and we started focusing on the e-commerce a lot because people were not really coming to the stores. They were calling up the stores. How could, they access our products from home? They were giving their sizes, the colors, we were getting it delivered. And we took a lot of online surveys also, what kind of products they want, what kind of services they want. We took through social media platforms also. We were seeing what were the happenings at their homes and, how we could cater through promotions and things like that. So I think we did look at it very, very differently. Because the social media platform, I think, we as young generations, we kind of log in and we are very fond of going through it in a very different way, right? I mean, Instagram, Facebook, we did run a lot of offers of if they, go through us, it is the certain kind of code that you prevail. And so I think we did increase the sales quite a bit through social media platform and stuff.
Right. Okay. So, Rachita, I wanted to also get your sense for any other businesses, maybe startups and MSMEs, which is primarily the sector which you see a lot of young people with. And what do you see for them? Like you mentioned a few aspects. Of course, technology is something, innovation we know is a key aspect. And also this whole understanding and the proper usage of social media. What would be your advice to them, or how would you see them managing their businesses in the times coming?
So I think a lot of startups that are funded by VCs now, if those fund managers start, looking for lesser riskier options, they may lose a little bit of funding. I think one of the great quality, so I have worked in a startup before. So right after my undergrad, I used to work for an e-commerce startup called Wish, which is basically a Chinese Amazon. They like sold products for like $1, $2, and I used to be their analyst. And one of the things that is very important in a startup culture is, yes, of course, all the qualities that you were talking about, being resilient and everything, but I think what takes precedence over everything is being adaptable. You have to be able to pivot, if and so you need to. Like one of the things we did during this pandemic, we are a footwear and accessories brand. We understand that, but there was no demand. Like at least there wasn't enough demand for our manufacturing units to be running. So we had to pivot. We had to start incorporating masks, N95s, sanitizers, those protective gears. Of course, you also have to be in specific to the pandemic, you have to be a little bit sensible about distribution. We have to instruct our institutional sales managers that, priority to be given to medical institutions and hospitals. And only once that demand has been met with, do you take it further to hotels and restaurants, etc. So being able to change, not completely change, but being able to, you cannot be so resolute in your product offering that you're not able to survive. For a startup, first you survive. Another thing is that for startups, I think apart from funding and apart from being able to pivot, they're problem solvers. So if that problem no longer exists, I don't know, pre-COVID, post-COVID, we are going to learn, we are going to figure out new problems. There are going to be new startups. So I don't know. Personally, I have never invested in a startup, nor have I started a startup. I am not in an innovation business, so I'm not the right person. If anything, I'm very tech shy. If you compare me to my father, my previous generation is a lot more tech savvy, because he reads about something and he's like, we must incorporate it in our business. And I'm more like, so the other day only he was saying that drone delivery service. And I was like, that is not cost effective at all for us. We cannot afford it. And he's a lot more like, he wants to be the forerunner. For me, I think I'm more like, of course, I'm willing to be open in learning what are the options available in technology, supply chain, whatever, inventory management, whatever. But does not mean I'm looking to be the first person to jump on the bandwagon. I'm willing to see if it's tested and tried, and if it works for other retail companies, I'm happy to be the last person, as long as I'm not experimenting at the cost of my business. Other than that, what was your question apart from startups? It was
So MSMEs are in similar spaces, and a lot of our young entrepreneurs are actually, running MSMEs, and that's I think it applies. What you just responded is basically, of course, things that work for both. But it's a very interesting concept, and I'm so happy that you mentioned that your father is the sort. So
you should ask him this question. He'll give you a list of ideas that I have shot down because it does not make sense in our module. Understanding the pulse of any organization, I think takes precedence over any textbook knowledge, and I don't argue with him. In terms of what vision he has for the brand, I agree with him. My only issue with him is the approach. He may have we both may believe in fitness, but he will do yoga, I will do Pilates. I'll tell you a very recent argument we had. We were deciding on the ad spend for a particular festival. And his idea was, we need to flood the market with newspaper catalogs and billboards and radio. And recently he discovered digital media, so that's another dangerous territory for me. And I am more like, we don't need to do that. We already have last 10 years of data. We just look at the campaigns that we have already run, look at the corresponding sales performance, and then find an optimal solution, minimize wastage. So here, and at the end of the day, we don't take the decision, the board of directors do. Most of the times I'm right, because he's more like, but I'm the one who brought the business so far. You cannot argue with me. If I didn't know what I was doing, the company won't be where it is today. I was like, yes, but you get a little bit carried away. Not that I don't get carried away. Remember, I think recently I was talking to you about my failure. Anyway, I think you'll probably be asking that later.
Yes, great. Thank you. And I think that's a very interesting concept. And this is something that definitely second generation entrepreneurs do face, is this, finding the synergy between the old and the new and how they think. And you've kind of got it the other way around than most of us. I think sometimes we are sort of more aggressive on all of the new technologies, and we are eager to try. But it's so interesting to note that your father is actually the one who's in the forefront of that. And I think I have a little bit of a soft spot for somebody who does that. So I think I really feel strongly. Somi, I also wanted to check with you, how did you actually see that whatever your product ranges were or anything, they were suitable to the market? And as you see now going forward, I mean, we've all evolved. Like you just mentioned that there was a huge demand for Hawaii chappals, and I think we all morphed from wearing very formal wear, and especially the footwear was the first thing that we let go after the pandemic, and just switched to much more comfortable wear. And I think that's something that some of us are going to be reluctant to give up on even afterwards, because I think we've it's just vanity versus comfort. And so do you see changes in product requirements in the behavior of consumers also going forward?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, when I started with the company, it was more of the Hawaiis. It had a lot of comfort shoes, like, I'm not sure if you're, well versed with the terms of PVCs and EVAs and PUs and all of that. I mean, it had less of leathers and sports. So after I have come in, so I have gotten a lot of these exclusive ranges where leather is concerned, where a lot of, heels, stilettos, and whatever fashionable things are going on in the media and things like that. So yes, I did come up with a lot of ideas and strategies of that sort. Then we faced the pandemic, where I obviously had to go back from where I had started. The Hawaiis, I had to stress a lot on the Hawaiis. I had to, talk to my father. I had to, yes, I did have to give a little bit of a discount and work on the percentages to, increase our sales and to capture more of the market. And I think we did really well in that sector during that time. Yes, I mean, we have different seasons. We have different flavors in Indian market. Like we have the Choitro sale coming up. We have the Durga Pujas, the Kali Pujas, where a lot of different sectors of the footwear sells differently. Sometimes the bridal sells more. Sometimes it is the summer wear. Sometimes it's the winter wears. So it depends how we cater to it. So yeah, I think it's been a very interesting concept. It's been an interesting overview of how the footwear is evolving over time.
I think one of the things that has happened as part of the pandemic, it's also a little bit of a conscience check, is the fact that you suddenly realize that there are certain things in life that we've done without during the pandemic, and we can easily do without, and let go of those things and become more practical, more focused on, also I think earlier we were having sessions and Ms. Shobna was here, and she was talking about things which are sort of more important, more being conscious of things which are just really central to what we need, and letting go of a lot of things which are perhaps considered extravagant, and maybe rolling back on certain things. So is that something that you think of as a possible strategy, even in your own brand, and your advice for other entrepreneurs who are planning to grow, in terms of what the world will be like in the future? Is that consumer behavior that is something that we think that has made us realize? We were talking about mental health, we were talking about other kind of issues. Those things will influence us as we go forward. And we also know that this is maybe whatever we call the new normal is something that may not completely fade away. What do you think in those contexts for entrepreneurs, for businesses, Somi?
Yeah, so I think before the pandemic, we were all about buying a lot of things, a lot of unnecessary junks, a lot of footwears, apparels, accessories, where during the pandemic, where we realized that, these kind of stuff for the daily, I mean, it was all lying in our cupboards. There was dirt in them, and we had things in our showroom that we were so scared about that, it's not selling. What are we going to do with it? So, but with time, with after the pandemic, we realized that okay, maybe it's going to sell on time, or we don't maybe need as many because we aren't still socializing as much as we did a year back or maybe a year and a half back. So I think yeah, our shopping as a whole has come down definitely for all of us. I mean, I'm sure for the rest of the world, the shopping part has really come down. But having said so, I think a lot of for the future trends, I think this work from home concept is really picking up because previously prior to this we had no concept of the work from home part. We didn't even know whether it would be successful or whether we would be able to really survive or get ideas or be able to survive working from home. So I think right now we have, I myself have a lot of employees who I have made them place at home, and they are kind of generating reports for me. They are sort of seeing the figures. They're giving me a lot of detailed analysis on how to go about it. So I think, they are, I was inquiring with them, like, what kind of shopping are you guys doing? Are you guys looking at footwears or not? And they were like, right now it's all about comfort wears. The fashion part, for some people has come down, but for some people, like I know, for some people, for a certain sector of people, they want to buy less right now, but very, very fashionable and, chic stuff. So it really, I think, depends on person to person how they are going about this whole pandemic issue. But I think overall, when right now the markets are picking up, touch wood, the market has really picked up from January onwards, where I see there has been a real increase in the fashionable items, the high MRP, the fashionable items are selling a lot. For women generally, for men, it's been stable. Yes, but women are really buying a lot of fashionable items. So, well, in future, you can't really say, but fingers crossed, I hope the high MRP fashionable stilettos keep selling. I mean, yes, it is definitely interesting to see, to actually handle that kind of fashionable aspect of footwear. And of course, it generates a lot of, higher sales.
I second you on that totally. I hope that fashion completely doesn't go out and it's still
absolutely, absolutely.
So Rachita, you were talking a little bit about that, and I wanted to come back to this. Is one aspect that we talk very strongly about, and I think a lot of the new generation definitely is conscious, and of course there is a huge spectrum of the industry that has taken this on, is about sustainability, about how to manage the environment. And you were talking a little bit when we spoke earlier about how you tried to start a sustainable range and then it didn't work out so well. So any learnings from that which maybe our viewers could get some inputs from?
Yeah, actually there were two trends and I jumped on both the bandwagons because two conscious consumption trend. One was that of sustainability, which didn't work for me. So what happened was I made a sustainable brand, like just a different logo. I dropped my house colors, which is blue, and I went for the green logo. And so the idea was to go green, and I promoted vegan leather products. Had an entire line of vegan leather accessories, footwear, so on and so forth. And when you're so passionate about an idea that you like wear those blinders and you just go for it, that's what I did. And it was my mistake. I didn't do a market survey. The problem was, first of all, I'm not going to say people were not ready for it. It's my fault that I didn't educate consumers because I felt so strongly about an idea. I went for it and I thought everybody was on the same page as me. And that is when I failed because that project did not pick up. At least it did not do as well as I had hoped it would. Now, see, I still have those line of that collection available in stores, but I don't promote it because the ROI is so low. Hopefully in the future, and hopefully soon, because we need more people, more brands to be talking about this, because the kind of lifestyle we are leading right now, it is not sustainable, and we cannot keep at it. Like, we are ruining the earth at an accelerated rate. See, I understand, vegan leather is not as comfortable as genuine leather because obviously leather is skin is breathable, leather is breathable, and of course it's more durable. But I hope in the future I have another opportunity where I can relaunch this brand with full vigor. But unfortunately, I don't see it happening very soon. Another trend that happened that really worked for our brand was that there were these campaigns, vocal for local, make in India, Atmanirbhar Bharat, where people were actually conscious. Like up until a few years ago, if you look at the behavioral change, like behavioral aspects of consumers, they would be like, I want to wear a Swiss watch, or I want to wear a pair of Italian shoes. That was a matter of pride. Now there is a cultural shift where people are like, no, I want to wear a brand that is Indian, that is made that's selling products that are made in India to support the local economy. That kind of awareness has really helped my brand. At least that trend that really worked for me. Unfortunately, the sustainable trend did not work for me. Apart from that,
that's great news for the other businesses as well, because I think that effort that has been made by the government,
yes,
the vocal for local and talking about Atmanirbhar, of course, one, I think it fills even the businesses with a lot of pride, and then to see that reflected in the consumers also, to feel a sense of pride that they are actually switching to Indian products is something.
It was long overdue, wasn't it? We were a pioneer in textile and apparel for so many years. Why do we need, when you went shopping abroad, why do we need like an American brand or a Spanish brand? Go to your local Zara. The shirts are made in India. Why do you need a Spanish retailer? Why do you need a Spanish retailer to sell products that are made in India? That's the thing. So now that there's an awareness, I'm very happy that this trend has taken momentum. Hopefully the other one does too very soon.
I'm sure it will, and I think maybe we also need to do our own part in educating the customers.
Right.
It's always not choosing just the most expensive or the most attractive option, but sometimes being a little more mindful. Soumi, I'd just like to actually ask you the last question. Is something that we had a session in the morning, and the economic advisor to the government of India who came, he talked about something in terms of wealth creation. And I think as head of a business and leading this from the front, what would you think are, again, the next gen's views on wealth creation, and how do you see it going forward for your own business?
Well, I think about wealth creation, we, as I or as the industry sees it, there is a lot of investment in the agricultural sector. I think our main wealth belongs there. So even me as a person, me as an industry, I am investing. I have a huge portion of land. I am investing a large portion on agriculture over there as well. Apart from seeing a lot of footwear. So because I think of how our farmers are given a lot of importance in our country, and wealth, our actual wealth, I think still lies there, which is really, I think some part of it is really not utilized properly, because we used to get a lot of sources from abroad, which I think needs to be bought locally, or needs to be grown locally, because there are so many local stuff that we still not are aware of for our health, as well as other purposes. We still not are very aware of these things. So I think it's all about agriculture for the wealth creation for us, and how I think we need to get more into our Ayurvedic sources to develop that. We have a lot of wealth there. So that's, I think, 21, apart from footwear, this is where I probably will be focusing a lot.
Okay, wonderful. So I think that's definitely one sector to watch out for then, now that the next gen thinks that that's an area that will definitely be an area of focus in the future. I think we've had a wonderful discussion, and I'd really like to thank both of you. I think great ideas that came out. I've some of the things that we talked about, Shashwat spoke about, evolving the strategy constantly on the business and the resilience that was so important. And the fact that all these businesses have done well, they're thriving, and they've of course managed to outlive the pandemic has been testament to that. And Rochita, you added the word adaptability to that, and I think that makes so much sense. It's a very important concept for the younger generation to pick up on, and to not sort of pin themselves to one idea when they have it. And it's wonderful. So I mean, the ideas that you talked about, what will we to expect for the future, and this whole aspect, I think, of the young people also being a part of course, the wealth creation for their own businesses, but also for the entire country. And I think India being a country which so strongly believes in its youth and the power of the youth taking it forward, this will be such a great takeaway for all the young viewers that we have here with us today. So thank you so much for that. And I'd like to hand it back to the chairman. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have had a wonderful session spread throughout. I would like to thank all our esteemed speakers who have joined us. A big thank you to the delegates who have been here with us, and also the support of our sponsors, Anmol Feeds Private Limited, Bandhan Bank Limited, Berger Paints India Limited, BTL EPC Limited, Caring Minds, Loving Hearts, Beautiful Minds, Century Industrial Products, CSL Limited, Chemtech Specialty Limited, Crompton Greaves Consumer Electricals Limited, Electrosteel Castings Limited, Elegant Steel, Exide Industries Limited, Havels India Limited, Hyco Engineers Private Limited, Hotel Windsor, Infinity, ITC Limited, Jagdamba Power and Alloys Limited, Jamipol, JIS Group, Cucina, Luminous, Nico Engineering Services Limited, Ocean Whale Shipping Services Private Limited, Orient Electric, Philips Carbon Black Limited, PwC, W Auto Group, RSB Group, Safechem Industries, Sri Bajrang Power and Ispat Limited, SKP Securities Limited, Swadha Developers Private Limited, Tata Hitachi Construction Machinery Company Private Limited, Tata Metallics, Tata Steel Limited, Tega Industries, the Indian Steel and Wire Products Limited, the Park Hotels, Titagarh Wagons Limited, Tosha Machines Limited, Beher Visa Group, Woodlands Hospital. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.